Story 1. The smell of someone. The rain started a little after 9, and I was glad of it. It is the good kind tonight, not the hard kind that rattles the gutters and keeps you counting. The soft kind. The kind that lays itself down on the roof in a long, even hush and does not ask anything of you. I turned off the porch light and stood at the kitchen window for a while and watched it come down through the streetlight at the end of the drive. Silver lines. A whole sky of them, patient and thin. I made tea I did not really want, just to have the warmth of the mug. This is the part of the night I like. The part where the house goes quiet and the rain does the talking. I should tell you first that I have always noticed smells. My whole life. My mother used to say I had a dog's nose and a girl's face, which was not a kind thing to say to a child, but she meant it kindly. Or I have decided to remember it that way. I can walk into a room and tell you if someone opened a window an hour ago. I can tell you what my neighbor cooked for supper from my own back step. It is not a gift. It is just a thing I am. And I mention it now because it matters, because it is the reason I noticed, and because noticing is the whole of it. The house smells like my house. That is the baseline. You know your own house the way you know the inside of your own mouth without ever thinking about it. Mine is old radiator dust and the lavender soap I keep by the sink and the faint sweetness of the wood floors that the last owners waxed too many times. Coffee in the morning. Cold ash from the fireplace I never use. Underneath all of it, something I could not name for years and finally decided was just me. The smell a person leaves in the place they live long enough. That is home. That is what home is, if you want to know. It is the smell of yourself, layered up over years, until you cannot smell it anymore. So I know when it changes. That is the thing I am trying to say, and I'm going to try to say it plainly, because if I dress it up, it will sound like less than it is. It changed at 9:40. I had gone up to draw a bath, because a bath and the rain together is about the closest I get to peace these days, and I came back down for the tea I had left cooling on the counter, and halfway down the stairs I stopped. On the 4th step from the bottom, I can tell you it was the 4th because I have walked those stairs 10,000 times, and my foot knew before I did that I had stopped. Somewhere I never stop. Wet earth. That is what it was. Wet earth and cold air. The smell of outside. The smell of the yard after rain. That dark mineral green smell. Dirt and worms and the underside of leaves. It was in my front hall, faint but whole. The way a smell is whole, and the front door was shut. I could see it from the stairs. Shut and chained because I chain it at dark. Always, it is the last thing I do before I go up. The windows were shut against the rain. There was no reason for the outside to be inside. I stood on the 4th step and I breathed it and I told myself the sensible things. That rain pushes air around. That old houses breathe. That a draft under the door could carry the smell of the wet yard in and pool it in the hall. All of that is true. I want you to know, I know all of that is true. I am not a foolish woman. I am 43 years old, and I live alone, and I have taught myself to be reasonable about the noises a house makes at night, because the alternative is not sleeping, and I need to sleep. But a draft is moving air, and the hall was still. The smell was just sitting there, cold and green and heavy in a column, as if someone had walked in from the rain and stood exactly there and then stopped being anywhere at all. I went down the last 4 steps and I walked through it, and I felt it on my face like walking through the cold spot in a lake. And on the other side of it, the hall smelled like my hall again. Radiator dust and floor wax and lavender. I turned around and the wet earth was behind me, a body of it, holding its shape. I want to tell you I ran. I did not run. I went and got my tea. That is the truth of how these things go, at least for me. You do not run the first time. The first time you get your tea, because the tea is real and the smell is only a smell, and a smell cannot hurt you. A smell is the safest thing there is. It has no hands. I drank the tea standing up in the kitchen where the air was ordinary, and when I went back through the hall to go up to my bath, the wet earth was gone. The hall was just the hall. I told myself I had imagined the shape of it, the standing column of it, that I had smelled a real draft and dressed it up in my mind because I was tired and the rain makes me strange. I ran my bath. I lay in it until the water went tepid. The rain kept on, soft and even, and I listened to it and I let the fear drain out of me the way the heat drained out of the water, slowly, until I could not have told you it had ever been there. That was the first night. I am telling it slow because it came on slow. That is important. It did not break the door down. I have heard people describe the ones that break the door down, and this was never that. This was the opposite of that. This was patient in the way weather is patient, arriving before you notice it has arrived, so that by the time you say the word storm, it has been raining for an hour. No, not patient. I said that wrong, and I want to take it back, because patient is a warm word, and there was nothing warm in this. Patience sounds like something waiting kindly. This did not wait. This came on. Every night a little more of it, a little further in, a little sooner. If I had to give it a word, I would say it was hungry, and I would say it was in a hurry, and I would say that under the softness of how it moved, there was something that did not have all the time in the world and knew it. The second night, the smell came at 9:20. 20 minutes earlier than the first. I noted the time because I had started to note things, the way you start writing down what you eat when your stomach turns on you. Wet earth again, in the hall, in the same column, the same held shape, and this time, under the wet earth, something else. Faint. I had to stand in it and breathe it twice to find it. Cold skin. You know that smell. You do, even if you have never named it. It is the smell of a person who has just come in from the cold. Their coat, their hair, the air trapped against them. When someone comes in out of the winter and you hug them, before they warm up, they smell like that, like the cold has gotten into them and is coming back off. It is not a bad smell. That is the terrible part. It is an ordinary, human, almost tender smell, the smell of someone you are glad to see. Home at last from somewhere far, and I was smelling it in my empty hall at 9:20 at night with the door chained and the rain coming down, and there was no one there to be glad to see. I did not sleep well the second night. I lay in bed and I kept my nose alert, which is a thing I did not know you could do until I did it, keeping a sense on watch the way you might keep an ear on a sleeping child. Around midnight I thought I caught it again, thinner, higher up, closer to the bedrooms. Cold skin and wet earth. I sat up and turned on the lamp and there was nothing, only my room, only the rain, and the smell was gone before I could be sure I had smelled it, and I lay back down and did not turn the lamp off. And I watched the ceiling until the gray came up in the window. The third day, I did what a reasonable person does. I looked for the leak. I went down into the cellar with a flashlight and I put my face against the stone and I breathed. Cellars smell like wet earth. Of course they do. They are a hole in the ground. I thought, there. That is it. The cellar is breathing up the stairs. The rain has soaked the ground, and the old stone is wicking it, and the smell is climbing. I felt so light when I thought it. I actually laughed, alone in the cellar with the flashlight. Because I had solved it, I had made it ordinary, and ordinary is the thing I wanted more than anything. But the cellar smell is not the same smell. I stood down there and I made myself be honest, because being honest was the only tool I had. The cellar is wet earth, yes, but it is old wet earth, dead and mineral and still. What came into my hall at night was wet earth that was moving, living wet earth. Rain still on it, the green of it fresh, the way the yard smells the instant the rain touches it, not the way a cellar smells after 100 years of dark. And there was no cold skin in the cellar. There was no person in the cellar smell. The hall smell had a person in it. The cellar did not. I knew the difference the way you know your mother's voice from a woman who sounds like her. I went back up the stairs and I did not laugh anymore. I called my sister that afternoon and I did not tell her any of it. I want to be clear about that because I have thought about it since. I had the phone in my hand and she was talking about her kitchen renovation, and there was a moment where I could have said, "Dana, something is happening in my house." And I did not. I said the counters sounded lovely. I asked about the tile. I let her talk because to say it out loud would have made it a thing in the world, and as long as it was only mine, only a smell, only a thing I noticed, I could still believe I was making it up. The moment you tell someone, you have decided it is real. I was not ready to decide. The fourth night, it came at 9, on the hour, 10 minutes earlier than the second night, 20 earlier than the first, and I understood then that it was not random, that it was walking toward a time the way it was walking toward a place, and that both of those walks were going to arrive. And it was closer, not in the hall this time. In the kitchen doorway, I was standing at the sink rinsing the one plate and the one fork I use, and it came up behind me, wet earth and cold skin, and this time a third thing under the other two. And the third thing was the worst yet, because the third thing was warm. Warmth has a smell. People do not think it does, but it does, if your nose is the kind of nose mine is. The warm smell of a person is their skin when the cold has come off it. The particular animal warmth of a living body, breath and scalp and the back of a neck. It is the smell you get when someone leans in close to tell you something. It is intimate. It is the smell of another person inside the small circle of air that you think of as yours. And it was behind me in my own kitchen, close, at the height a person would be if a person were standing just off my right shoulder, and I did not turn around. I want to explain why I did not turn around, because this is the part people do not understand who have not had it happen. You would think you turn around. You would think the body turns you around whether you want it or not. But there is an older thing than that, and the older thing says, if you turn around, you will see it, and if you see it, it is here. And as long as you do not turn around, it is only a smell, and a smell has no hands. So I stood at the sink with the water running over the plate and my own warm breath fogging the cold window. And I did not turn around, and I said out loud, in a voice I did not recognize as mine, "Please." Just that. Please. To the empty kitchen, and the warmth held there for one more moment, close and human and wrong, and then it thinned, and then it was gone, and the kitchen smelled like lavender soap and dishwater. And I turned around to nothing at all. I slept in the bathroom that night. I locked the door, and I put a folded towel down in the tub, and I lay in it with the light on, and I did not sleep so much as wait. And the rain kept coming down soft, and even on the roof over me. The same rain. The only thing in the whole night that was not changing. Here is what I have worked out in the night since. And I offer it to you the way you offer someone directions to a place you hope they never have to go. A smell tells you where something has been. That is what a smell is, in the plain animal sense of it. When you smell the wet earth has already touched the ground. When you smell the coffee is already made. A smell is the past. A smell is proof that a thing was here. For most of my life, that is all a smell has ever been to me. A record. A little ghost of a thing that has moved on. But this did not work like that. I could not get it to work like that, no matter how I turned it. The smell was not telling me where it had been. The smell was telling me where it was going. It arrived somewhere before the rest of it arrived. The wet earth came into the hall, a full breath before anything else was there. And then, the next night, the cold skin, and then the warmth. Each night a layer deeper, a layer closer, a layer more like an actual person standing in an actual room. as if the whole of it were assembling itself out of the dark, one sense at a time, and smell was only the first sense to come online, the scout sense. So I learned to read it. That is the only thing I have done that I am proud of in this whole account. I learned my own house by smell the way I never had before, on purpose, out of fear. I learned that the front hall at rest smells like dust and wax. I learned that the kitchen at rest smells like soap and the cold of the window. I learned the stale, still smell of the cellar, and the piped smell of the bathroom, and the old cotton smell of my own bedroom. I made a map of the ordinary in my own nose so that I would know, the instant it changed, that it had come again, and where. Because that is the only warning I get. There is no sound. I have listened until my ears rang, and there is no sound. There is no cold spot you can measure, no lights that dim, none of the things people tell you to watch for. There is only the smell, arriving first, arriving before, and if I am paying attention, I get a few seconds. A few seconds between when the wet earth comes into a room and when the warmth arrives close behind my shoulder. A few seconds to leave the room. That is what the smell buys me, a few seconds. And it is buying me fewer every night, because every night it starts closer to me, and the walk from wet earth to warmth gets shorter. And I have begun to understand, the way you understand a thing in your body before your mind will say it, that there is going to be a night when the warmth and the wet earth arrive together, at the same moment, in the same room. And on that night there will be no few seconds. On that night the smell will not be a warning anymore. On that night the smell will only mean that it is already here. I moved rooms. I want to tell you that I fought it, that I did something. And moving rooms is what I did. When the kitchen turned, I stopped being in the kitchen at night. I took my tea to the front room. 3 nights, the front room was clean. Then on the 4th, the wet earth came into the front room at 8:40, and I felt something in my chest just fall, the way the bottom falls out of a bag. Because it had found me. It goes where I go. It is not haunting a room. I understood that then. It is not the house. It never was the house. It is me. It is coming to where I am, and the rooms do not matter. The rooms were never the thing. I am the thing. And a house has a lot of rooms, but a person only has the one body, and it is always in exactly one place. And that place can be found by smell. I thought about leaving. Of course I thought about leaving. But I have this idea, and I cannot shake it, that leaving is a room too. That the car is a room, and the motel is a room, and my sister's guest bed is a room, and that if I went to any of them, the wet earth would come in at 8-something and stain its cold green column in the doorway, and then, a breath later, the cold skin, and then, a breath after that, close behind my shoulder, the warmth, that there is no room in the world that is not a room it can walk into, because the thing it is walking toward is not a place. So I stay. I stay because staying and leaving are the same, and at least here I know where the 4th step is, and which window sticks, and how the rain sounds on this roof and not another. I tried to cover it. I should tell you that, because you will try it too, if this ever comes to you, and I want to save you the trouble. I thought, if it comes as a smell, I will drown it in other smells. I will make the air so full of my own choosing that there is no room in it for the wet earth. So, I bought candles, the cheap, fat kind from the grocery, vanilla and cinnamon, and something called fresh linen that smells like no linen that was ever fresh. I lit them all one night, 6 of them, down the hall and across the kitchen counter, and the house went thick and sweet and false. And I sat in the middle of it, almost laughing at myself. A grown woman barricaded behind vanilla. It came anyway. That is the thing I need you to hear at 9. Minus a little, the wet earth came up through the vanilla, the way a stone comes up through still water, cold and green and whole, not fighting the candle smell. Not pushing it aside, just present underneath it, more real than it, the way a true thing is always more real than a thing you bought. And under the wet earth the cold skin, and I understood that I had not covered anything. I had only made the air harder to read. I had blinded my one good sense with vanilla and given up the few seconds it buys me. And I blew the candles out one by one with my hand shaking, and I sat in the smoke of them, and I did not try that again. I tried bleach after that, which was worse. Bleach is a bully of a smell. It stands over everything, and I scrubbed the hall floor and the kitchen and the front room until my eyes ran. And for one night, the house smelled of nothing but the clean sharp, nothing of bleach. And I slept. I actually slept 4 hours, the best of the week. And on the second night, the bleach had faded to that flat swimming pool ghost it leaves, and the wet earth came up through that too. And now the memory of it is joined to the smell of bleach, so that every time I clean, I feel it coming. And I have made my own house into a place that warns me of itself. You cannot scrub a thing out of the air that is not coming from the air. It is coming from wherever it comes from, and the air is only where I meet it. There was a night it brought something new, and the new thing frightened me more than any of it, because the new thing was specific. Wet earth, cold skin, warmth, all of that by now familiar, almost a routine, God help me, and then over the top of it, high and sweet and particular. A soap, not my lavender, a man's soap. That green barbershop smell, the kind that comes in a white and blue tube, the kind my father used his whole life, and the kind no one I have let into this house in 6 years has ever used. I stood in the hall, and I smelled my dead father's soap coming off of something standing in the dark of my own front room. And I will tell you honestly that for one long, terrible moment, I was not afraid. I was glad. I nearly said his name. And that gladness is the most dangerous thing that has happened to me in all of this, because that is what it does. It does not only come closer, it learns. Night by night, it adds a layer, and the layers are getting particular. The layers are starting to smell like people I have loved, and I think if I stood still long enough, it would find every warm smell I have ever leaned toward in my life and wear them all at once, so that turning around would feel like coming home instead of dying, and I would do it gladly, and that is the trap. And I'm telling you about the trap so that if it ever wears your it is only very good at knowing what you miss. My sister came in the middle of all this. Dana. I finally broke and asked her to stay a night, and I still did not tell her why. I said the rain had me lonely, which was not even a lie. She came with wine in her overnight bag, and she stood in my hall, and she took a big theatrical breath, the way people do in someone else's house, and she said, "God, your place always smells so good, so warm." And I stood behind her, and I could smell it starting. The wet earth just beginning at the edge of the kitchen, coming even now, even with her here, and she could not smell it. She stood a foot from it, and she smelled warmth and lavender and home. I watched her not smell it, and I understood, finally and completely, that it is mine, that it comes from me, that she was as safe in my hall as she would be in her own. Because it was never the house, and it has no interest in her. And it was standing in the kitchen doorway breathing wet earth at the back of my neck while my sister poured wine and asked if I had been sleeping. I said not well. She said the rain. I said yes. The rain. She slept in the front room and slept fine and left in the morning easy and light, and I loved her so much in that moment for being someone it does not want, for being able to walk out of my house into the wet, bright yard and just drive away. And I stood on the porch and watched her go, and behind me, from inside, through the open door, I could smell it waiting in the hall in the daylight, which it had never done before, in the daylight. Wet earth in the morning hall. It was not keeping to the night anymore either, like the time. The night I had thought was its border. The 9 o'clock and then the 8:40 was just another distance. It was crossing, walking toward me across the hours the way it walked toward me, across the rooms. The bedroom was the last line I had. I never told you that I had been keeping the bedroom clean, but I had been, the way you keep one candle for the very end. Every night I would go up and the bedroom would smell like old cotton and my own sleep and nothing else. No wet earth, no cold skin, and I would lie down in the one clean room in the house, and I would let that be enough. It was the one place it had not come. I had begun to believe there was a rule, that the bedroom was safe, that a body needs one safe room and the world grants it, which is a childish thing to believe, and I believed it with my whole heart because I needed to. It came into the bedroom 4 nights ago. I woke at some black hour with no rain, which was itself wrong. The rain had stopped. The roof was silent for the first time in a week, and I woke into that silence with my nose already ringing the alarm my mind had slept through. Wet earth in my bedroom, beside the bed, on the side that has been empty for 6 years. Cold skin. And then, as I lay there rigid with my eyes shut, the warmth at the exact height it would be if someone had lain down on the empty side of my bed and turned toward me in the dark. Close. The warm, near smell of a person's breath and hair on the pillow beside mine, in the one room I had saved, and the rain not even there to cover the sound of my own heart. And I lay on my back with my eyes shut, and I did not turn my head. And after a while, a long while, I felt the warmth cool and the wet earth thin, and I was alone again in the ordinary smell of my... But the rule was broken. There is no clean room now. There is no candle for the end. There is only me in whatever room I am in, and the smell arriving first, and the few seconds fewer each time, and the warmth coming to lie down beside me as if it has every right, as if it lives here, as if it always did. I keep a notebook now, a small one, by the lamp, with the times in it, and the runes and the layers, in my own handwriting getting worse down the page. 9:40, hall, earth. 9:20, hall, earth and skin. 9, kitchen, earth and skin and warm. I read it back some nights the way you read a tide chart, looking for the pattern that will tell me the hour of the highest water, and the pattern is plain, and it is cruel in how plain it is. It comes sooner. It comes closer. It comes with more of itself each time. There is nothing in the notebook that says it stops. I keep waiting to write a night where it did not come, so that I would have a clean line, a night off, one page that says nothing happened, and I have not written that page yet. I do not think I am going to. And then 2 nights ago, I smelled it on me. That is the thing I have not been able to put down since. I had been out to the mailbox in the afternoon, in the drizzle, and I came in and hung my coat on the hook by the door the way I always do, and later, passing it, I caught the wet earth off my own coat, and my heart went sideways before I understood it was only rain, only the ordinary wet of a coat that had been out in the ordinary wet. Only that. I stood there with my hand on my own coat, breathing the wet earth of it. And I could not tell, I truly could not tell, whether it was the rain off the yard or whether it was the other thing, the arriving thing, whether it had gotten into the wool of my coat, the way it had gotten into the bedroom, whether it was on me now, whether I was carrying it. I put my face to my own wrist and breathed. I put my nose to my own shoulder. I could not smell myself. I told you that already, that home is the smell of yourself gone invisible from living in it too long. And now I cannot smell my own skin either. And I do not know if that is because it has always been that way, or because something has moved in over the top of me, the way it moved in over the top of the house, layer by layer, night by night, until there is no more me left in the air to smell. I have started to be afraid that when it finally stands close enough, and I finally turn, the warmth I smell will be my own. Tonight it is the good rain again, soft and even, laying itself down on the roof. And I have been sitting here in the front room with the lamp on and my nose on watch, the way you watch a pot, and for a long time the room has smelled like nothing but itself, old cotton and lamp heat, and, from the kitchen, the last of the tea. I have been thinking that maybe tonight it will not come, that maybe it has gotten what it wanted, whatever that was, or lost the thread of me, or that I imagined the whole slow arrival of it. The wet earth and the cold skin and the warm, close breath, imagined it out of loneliness and rain and a nose that was always too good for my own peace. But I know the timing now. I have kept the times. 9:40, 9:20, 9, then 8:40. Each night it starts sooner, and it is 8:15 now, and I have not smelled it yet. and I am telling you the time so that you understand why I am so calm, and why my calm is the worst part. Because I know that any minute now the front room is going to change. I know that first there will be wet earth, the fresh green of the yard and the rain, arriving all at once in the doorway there, and that I will have a few seconds, fewer than last night, and that I should get up. I should get up now, is the thing, while the room is still clean. That is the lesson of all of this, if there is one, and I am passing it to you. The time to move is while the air is still ordinary, not when the smell comes. When the smell comes, it is already too late to have moved in time. You are only reacting then. You are already behind it. The time to move is now, in the clean air, before there is any reason to, on faith, on the memory of nights. I am not getting up. I am sitting here with the lamp on and the rain coming down soft on the roof, and I am watching the doorway, and I am breathing, slow, testing each breath, and I will tell you the exact moment. I will tell you the second there, wet earth. It is in the doorway, fresh and green and cold, the whole yard of it, the rain still on it. And I have a few seconds now. I have this breath and maybe one more. I am not going to turn my head. I am going to sit very still and look at the lamp and listen to the rain, the good, soft, even rain that has not changed all night, that never changes, that does not want anything from me, and I am going to wait to find out whether, this time, under the wet earth, right now, before I can finish saying it, there is already the smell of cold skin, and then close, at my shoulder, the warmth. It is at my shoulder. The rain is still going. It does not care what is standing in my front room. It only comes down. It only says its long hush and lays itself on the roof and asks nothing. I am going to keep looking at the lamp. I am going to keep listening to the rain. I am not going to turn around. And the warmth stays where it is, close, just off my shoulder, the warmth of a person home at last from somewhere cold and far. Breathing in the small circle of air I thought was mine, and the wet earth of the yard is all around us now. And it does not go away this time. It does not thin and leave the way it always has. It just stays and stays. And the rain keeps coming down, and I keep my eyes on the lamp. The tea has gone cold on the table. I can smell that too. Cold tea and lamp heat and old cotton and lavender from the kitchen, all the small, true smells of the place I have lived so long that I stopped being able to smell myself in it. Home is the smell of yourself. I told you that. Layered up over years until it disappears. And I am sitting very still in the middle of my own disappeared smell with something warm and cold and green standing just behind me. And I am realizing, slowly, the way I realize everything. Too late, and by the nose, that I cannot smell the house anymore. Not the dust, not the wax, not the me of it. There is only the wet earth now, and the cold skin, and the warmth filling the whole room, filling the whole of what I can smell, so that there is no more room in the air for my house or for me. And I think that is what it was doing. All those nights, coming a layer closer, a layer deeper. Not to frighten me, though it did, but to move in, to lay itself down over the smell of me the way the rain lays itself down on the roof, to become the thing the house smells like, to become home. I am not going to turn around. The rain is so soft tonight. Listen to it. You can almost let it carry you off if you stop trying to stay awake for the end. I always did like this part of the night. The part where the house goes quiet and the rain does the talking. I am going to sit here in the lamplight and let it talk. And I am not going to turn around, and I am going to breathe the wet earth and the cold skin and the warmth slow, the way you breathe when you are finally letting go of a long day. And I am going to tell myself, the way my mother told me, that a nose like mine is a gift and not a curse, that it is only a smell, that a smell, it has no hands. It has no hands. It only has this, the wet earth, the cold air off the yard, the warmth of someone standing close behind you in a quiet house on a rainy night. So close, warm as family, home at last, and the rain going on and on over the roof, soft, even, asking nothing, and you not turning around, and the smell of it becoming, slowly, breath by breath, the smell of the place you live. Good night. Rest now, if you can. The rain will keep on. It always does. But if you wake in the small hours, in your own good dark, with the rain on your own roof and the room has changed, if there is wet earth where there should not be, or cold air, or the warm near smell of someone glad to be home, do not turn around to look. Just lie still. Keep your eyes soft, listen to the rain, and know that it was already in the room before you smelled it. It was always already in the room. The smell is only how you find out. Story 2, the warm room. I have kept houses my whole life, not grand ones. Ordinary ones, the kind with a furnace in the basement and a fuse box that hums when the dryer runs, the kind where you learn every draft and every warm patch the way you learn the sore spots in your own back. I am a practical woman. I say that not to brag, but so you understand the kind of person this happened to. I am not the sort who hears the house settle and thinks a ghost. I hear the house settle and I think, that is the north joist giving up a little heat, and I write it down if it seems worth writing down. So when I tell you my house turned cold on me, one room at a time, and left me exactly one warm room to live in, I want you to know I checked everything first. I checked it the way you would. It started in October. On a night it rained. I like the rain. I have always liked it. It came down soft and steady on the shingles, that even sound with no wind behind it. And I had the lamp on in the front room and a cup of tea going cold on the arm of the chair because I had forgotten it, the way you do when a book is good. I noticed the cold in my feet first, just my feet in their wool socks, on the rug I had bought at an estate sale 2 towns over. The rug was over hardwood, and hardwood is cold in October, so I did not think much of it. I tucked my feet up under me and kept reading, but the cold did not stay in my feet. Over the next hour, it came up my legs, and then it was at my knees, and then I could feel it on the backs of my hands where they held the book. It was not a draft. I want to be clear about that, because a draft is a moving thing. It comes from a gap. It has a direction. You can hold a wet finger up and find it. This was not moving. It was just there, filling the room evenly, like water fills a bowl, rising. And I sat in the middle of it and got colder while the rain went on soft and the lamp went on yellow, and nothing in the room looked any different than it had at 7 o'clock. I got up. I went to the thermostat in the hall. It read 68, which was where I keep it. I put my hand flat against the register in the floor, and the air coming up was warm. The furnace was running. The furnace was doing its job. I stood in the hall a moment, and the hall was warm. Then I stepped back into the front room, and it was like stepping into a walk-in cooler at the back of a grocery store. That same held, meat locker chill. And I stood there in the doorway with one foot in warm air and one foot in cold, and I remember thinking, very clearly, that is not possible. Heat does not do that. Heat spreads. Heat fills a space and equalizes. That is the whole nature of it. That is why you can warm a house at all. Cold is not a thing that arrives. Cold is only the absence of heat. And yet there it was, sitting in my front room like it owned the chair. I did the sensible things. I went down to the basement with a flashlight even though the light works, because I like to see the flame. The burner was lit, blue and steady. The blower was pushing. The plenum was warm to the touch. I checked the front room register and the damper was open. I went back up and got my little indoor thermometer, the one I use for the plants in winter, and I set it on the front room table, and I sat and I watched it, because I am the kind of person who watches the thermometer. It read 59, in a room off a hall that read 68, with a working register blowing warm air into it. The thermometer read 59, and while I watched, it went to 58. I moved the thermometer to the register itself, right in the warm stream, and it climbed back up, 70, 72, warm air is warm air. I set it back on the table 3 feet away, and it fell again like a stone dropped in a well. The warm air was coming in, and something in that room was drinking it. That is the only way I know how to say it. The heat went in, and the room stayed cold, and the difference had to go somewhere, and I could not tell you where, except that the room felt full. Not full of cold. Full. The way a room feels full when someone is in it, and you have not turned around yet. I slept upstairs that night with the door of my bedroom shut and a space heater running, and I told myself I would call somebody in the morning. A furnace man. A guy. I know a guy. I always know a guy. That is what it means to keep houses. In the morning, the front room was fine. 67, 68, warm as toast. The sun such as it was coming in gray through the rain that had not quite stopped. I put my hand on the chair where I had sat, and it was room temperature, an ordinary chair. I felt foolish. I did not call the guy. I want to tell you, I forgot about it, but I am not built to forget a number. 58 in a 68 house is a number. I kept the thermometer on the front room table after that, casually, the way you leave a thing out to keep an eye on it without admitting you are keeping an eye on it. And most days it read what the rest of the house read. But every few evenings, always in the evening, always after dark, it would start to fall. And it was always the front room. For 2 weeks, it was only ever the front room, my nicest room. The one with the good chair and the lamp and the window I liked to sit at, and I began, without quite deciding to stop sitting there. I moved to the kitchen. There is a little table in my kitchen where I take my breakfast, and it is a fine place to read in the evening too. Close to the coffee, close to the light. And for about a week the kitchen was warm and good, and I sat there in the evenings and let the front room be cold, and I thought, if it wants the front room, it can have the front room, as if that were a normal thought to have about a room. That is the part I keep coming back to, how reasonable it all felt while it was happening. How I bargained without noticing I was bargaining, gave up ground without noticing it was ground. Then the kitchen went cold. Same as before, feet first, on a rainy evening, the cold coming up out of nowhere into a room the furnace was heating, and the thermometer, which I had carried in and set on the kitchen table, sliding down past 60, past 55, while the register under the cabinet blew warm and useless. And this time, when I got up to leave the kitchen, I noticed the front room, the door to it, was open off the hall. And as I passed, I felt the heat come out of it. The good, even heat of a room that has been warmed and has held it. And I stopped in the doorway of the room I had given up. And it was the warmest room in the house. It had my chair and my lamp and my window, and it was warm as a held hand. And it did not want me in it. I know how that sounds. A room cannot want. But I stood in the doorway of my own front room, and I could not make myself step into it. I have tried many times since to describe the feeling, and the closest I have come is this. You know how it is when you walk into a room and 2 people go quiet, and you understand that you have interrupted something, that the room was theirs a moment ago, and your coming in has spoiled it, and the polite thing, the only comfortable thing, is to say, "Oh, sorry," and back out again. It was that. Exactly that. A warm room that had gone still and private and did not want the interruption of me. So I said, and I am not proud of this, I said out loud, "Sorry," and I backed out, and I went and sat in the cold kitchen with my coat on, because the kitchen at least did not mind me. After that, it went quickly. Or it felt quick. Looking back, I can lay it out like a schedule, like the route a person walks through a house turning off lights at the end of the night. Except it was turning the warmth off, room by room, and each room it emptied of warmth. It emptied of me. The kitchen stayed cold now, all the time, not just evenings. Then the dining room, which I barely used anyway, so I hardly counted that one, though I noticed the thermometer would not climb past 50 in there no matter what the furnace did. Then the downstairs bath. Then the little back porch I had winterized myself 2 years ago with my own hands and my own caulk gun, and which had held heat beautifully until now, and which now held nothing, cold as the yard. And every one of those rooms, once it was cold, stayed cold. But there was always, always one room that was warm. It moved. That is the thing I could not get used to. It was not that the front room was warm and everything else was cold, the way it would be if a single register were broken open. The warm room traveled. It would be the front room for a while, and then one evening, the front room would be as cold as the rest, and I would go looking, actually going room to room with the back of my hand out like a person feeling for a fever, and I would find the warmth had moved to the study or to the upstairs landing, or once, memorably, to the inside of the coat closet under the stairs, a space no bigger than a phone booth, warm as an eye. I stopped keeping the thermometer in any one place. I carried it with me. I would come down in the morning and hold it out and walk the ground floor slowly, watching the number, hunting the warm room the way you would hunt a leak, and when I found it, I would stand in the doorway of it and feel the heat and know, the way you know a stranger is in your seat on a bus, that it was not for me, because the warm room was never a room I could use. It was always a little off, too small, like the closet, or it was warm but the warmth sat wrong in it, gathered in one corner away from the chair, so that if I sat down, I sat in the cold part and the warm part stayed empty beside me, occupied, kept. I would sit in the cold part of the warm room in my coat, and I would look at the warm empty corner, and I would not look at it too long. I did finally call the guy. I want that on the record. I am not a woman who lets a thing go. His name is Dale, and he has done my furnace for 11 years, and he came out on a Tuesday with the rain still going, wiped his boots, and spent 2 hours in my basement at my crawl space, and up on a ladder at my registers with a smoke pencil and a manometer, all the real tools, the tools that measure real things. And Dale found nothing. The furnace was healthy. The ducts were tight, no leaks, no crushed runs, good static pressure, dampers all where they should be. He put his own instrument, a good one, a calibrated one, on my dining room table, and it read 51 in a house the furnace swore was 68. And I watched Dale's face while he looked at his instrument. And Dale is not an imaginative man. Dale is the least imaginative man I have ever been glad to know. And Dale went quiet and tapped the instrument with his finger, the way you tap a gauge you do not believe. He stood in my hall and he did not look at me for a second. Then he said, in the voice men use when they are handing a thing back to you because they do not want it, he said, I can't find anything wrong with your equipment. The equipment's good. And I said, I know, Dale. I know the equipment's good. And he packed his tools faster than he needed to. And he did not write me a bill. He said he'd send it, and he did not send it. And I understood that he did not want a piece of paper connecting his name to my house. I would not want it either. I have thought about that a lot. The way he carried his good instrument out of the cold room and into the warm hall and then out my front door and did not come back. He felt it too. That is the only thing I got from Dale that was worth anything. But it was worth a great deal to me. He felt it too. It was not the furnace. It was not me. The plants told me things I did not want to know. I keep plants, a good many of them, the way practical women who live alone often do, because a thing that needs watering gives the day a shape. I had a big jade plant in the front room that I had grown from a cutting for 12 years. A heavy, healthy thing in a clay pot on the sill, and it went first. And I did not understand it, because a jade plant is a tough plant, a desert plant. It forgives almost anything, but the leaves went soft and dark and glassy, the way leaves do when they freeze, and they dropped, and in a week it was bare sticks in a pot, and the pot itself, when I picked it up to throw it out, had a ring of frost on the underside where it met the sill. In a room the furnace was heating, in a house where the outdoor temperature that week never dropped below the 40s. The fern in the study went the same way, and the little violets on the kitchen windowsill, all of them, room by room, keeping exact pace with the cold as it moved, so that I could have charted the thing's progress through my house by the plants alone, a trail of frozen green marking where it had been, the way you track an animal by what it leaves behind. I stopped replacing them after the third one. There did not seem to be any point in growing things in rooms that were not going to be mine. I called the woman I bought the house from. This was a harder thing to do than calling Dale, because Dale deals in facts and this woman whose name was Mrs. Pruitt, and who had moved to a condominium near her daughter in another state, dealt in her own long life in these rooms, and I did not know how to ask her what I wanted to ask without sounding like exactly the kind of woman I have spent my whole life not being. I found her number in the closing papers I keep in the fireproof box, and I called on a gray afternoon, and I made small talk, the weather, the condo, her hip, and then I said, as lightly as I could, that I was having a funny time keeping the house warm. And did she remember when she lived here? Ever having trouble with certain rooms, certain cold rooms? And there was a silence on the line. Not a confused silence, a careful one. The silence of a woman deciding how much to say to a stranger about a house she had already sold. And then Mrs. Pruitt said, "We always kept to the back, my husband and I. Toward the end, we mostly kept to the back of the house. It was easier." And I said, "Easier how?" And she said, in the bright flat voice of someone closing a door, "Oh, you know how it is with a big old place? You find the room that suits you, and you settle. You'll find yours." And she wished me well, and she got off the phone quickly, and I sat with the dead receiver in my hand and thought about the daybed in the sewing room at the back of the house. And I understood that I was not the first, and that Mrs. Pruitt had found her warm room too, and had lived in it, and had said nothing, and had sold me the house with a clear conscience because, after all, she was leaving me exactly what she had been left. One warm room in a cold house, which is more than some people get. I tried, once, to take a room back. I am not without spine, whatever this account makes me sound like. It was a night in early December, before it took the bedroom, and I had had a glass of wine, which I do not often do, and the wine put something hard in me, and I decided I would not be moved out of my own front room by a temperature. So I put on my heavy coat and my scarf, and I carried a kitchen chair into the cold front room, and I set it down in the exact middle of the floor, in the coldest part, and I sat down in it, deliberately, the way you plant a flag. I said, out loud, "This is my house." I said it a few times. I sat in the cold with my arms crossed and my breath showing white in a room the furnace swore was warm, and I stayed. I made myself stay, and nothing happened, which is what I had told myself would happen. Nothing, and for about 20 minutes I felt I had won something, a stubborn woman in a coat in a cold room holding her ground. And then the cold, which had been an even thing, a filling thing, began to gather. I can only describe it as gathering. It drew in around the chair, around me, the way cold water finds the shape of you when you sit still in a lake, closer and closer to the skin, and the white of my breath came faster, and the backs of my hands ached, and the cold pressed in until it was not like sitting in a cold room anymore. It was like being held, gently and completely, by something the exact temperature of the space between them. I got up, I took my chair, and I went to bed. I did not try that again. I moved my reading chair 3 times. I want to describe that because it is the clearest picture I have of what I became. When the front room went cold for good, I dragged the chair, the good chair, into the study, because the study was warm that week, and the chair sat in the study for 4 days, and I read in it in the evenings, and it was fine. It was almost like a home. And then on the 5th evening, the study went cold while I was sitting in it, the cold coming up my legs mid-sentence, and I put the book down and got up and went looking, thermometer out, and found the warm room had moved to the landing at the top of the stairs, where there is no chair, where there is nothing but a runner rug and a window. So I dragged the chair up the stairs by myself, banging the walls, and I set it on the landing in the warm, and I sat in it there like a fool in a chair at the top of the stairs, and I read there, because that was where the warmth was, and where the warmth was where I was allowed. Do you see how it works? It did not chase me. I want you to understand that, because when I have tried to tell people, the ones I have told, they picture something chasing me, hunting me down through the house, and it was never that. It never wanted me. If it had wanted me, that would almost have been a comfort, to be wanted, even by that. No, it simply made itself comfortable room by room, and where it made itself comfortable I could not be, because its comfort and my comfort could not share a space, and so I went where it had not yet settled, and it settled there next, not to reach me, but simply because it was spreading the way a person who moves into a big house alone will, over the months, spread their things into every room until the house is full of them and it was moving in. That is all. It was moving in, and I was the one who already lived there. And there is not room in a house for two who both act like they own it, and only one of us was willing to keep backing down. I kept backing down. I am ashamed of how naturally it came to me. I have always been the one who keeps a house running, who does not make a fuss, who finds the practical accommodation, and every instinct I had for that turned against me here. Someone else in the cold rooms, someone with a temper, might have stood in the middle of the front room and shouted and refused to leave. And maybe, I have thought, maybe that would have done something. Maybe a house wants to be lived in by someone who will not give it up so easily. But I am not that person. I am a woman who says sorry and backs out of the doorway. I move my chair. I put on more sweaters. I bought 2 more space heaters and ran them in whatever room I was trying to hold that night. And the space heaters worked. That is the strange mercy of it. A space heater in a cold room would warm the 4 feet around it, and I would huddle in that 4 feet. But I could not run space heaters in every room, and I could not follow myself around. And the cold was patient. No, not patient. That is the wrong word. The rain kept on, most nights that fall. I found I minded that less than I minded the quiet nights. On the rainy nights, the sound on the roof was company, that soft, even wash, and I could sit in my 4 warm feet of space heater air with the rain going and almost feel that it was an ordinary lonely evening in an ordinary house. A woman getting older alone, nothing wrong that a hot bath would not fix. The rain was kind to me that way. It covered the other thing. Because the other thing had a sound too, or not a sound, an absence of sound, a thickness in the cold rooms, and the rain on the roof lay over that thickness like a hand over a scar. And on the rainy nights, I could pretend. It is a mean trick to say now that the thing I loved most, the rain, was also the thing that let me not act. Let me sit still and adjust and adjust and adjust while my own house closed around me, one warm room at a time. But I will not lie about it. I was glad of the rain. I am glad of it still. By December, I was living in 3 rooms, then 2. I do not mean I had locked the others. I mean I had stopped going into them. The dining room, the front room, the study, the downstairs bath, the back porch, the guest room, one by one, they had gone cold and stayed cold and become rooms. I passed through quickly with my head down, and I do not know when exactly. Each one crossed over from a room. I used to a room. I hurried past, because it happened the way the temperature happened, a degree at a time, no single moment you could point to. You do not lose a house all at once. You lose it the way you lose the heat, imperceptibly, and then one day you count the rooms you actually live in, and there are 2. And here is the thing I have not said yet, the thing that took me longest to admit even to myself. The rooms it took were always the ones I loved. It did not take the utility room. It never once bothered with the utility room, or the pantry, or the hall closet full of the vacuum and the mop, the working rooms, the plain rooms, the rooms with nothing in them for a body to enjoy. It took the front room with the good chair. It took the study with my books. It took the window seat where the morning light came in. It took, the week before Christmas, my own bedroom, the room I had slept in for 19 years. The cold coming up through the mattress one night, so that I woke shivering under 3 quilts at 2 in the morning in a room that read 48 degrees. And I lay there and understood that this one it meant to keep, that I would not get this one back. And I got up and I carried my pillow down the hall like a because there was still the warm room. There was always the warm room, and by then the warm room had stopped moving. That is how I knew it was almost done. For all those weeks the warmth had traveled, restless, trying rooms and leaving them, and I had chased it or fled it, depending on how you want to see it. But sometime around the middle of December it settled. It chose. It chose the small back room off the kitchen that I had always called the sewing room, though I have not sewn in years, and it held mostly boxes, a narrow room with 1 window and a daybed I kept in there for when my sister used to visit before we stopped speaking, and that room went warm and stayed warm, evenly, gently warm, 68, 70, a good even 70 with no cold corner in it, no wrong part, the first honestly comfortable room I had had since October. and every other room in the house went cold and stayed cold, and the warmth never left the sewing room again. I understood the offer. I want to be clear that I understood it, that I was not fooled, that I walked into it with my eyes open, because I have thought since that maybe that makes it worse, that a fooled woman is at least innocent. It had taken the whole house, every room it wanted, it had. And having taken everything, it had left me one. One warm room, the small one, the plain one, the one with the daybed and the boxes and the one window looking out on the wet backyard. And it had made that room genuinely, unarguably comfortable. And it had done that, I am certain, so that I would go into it and stay, and stop wandering the cold house with my thermometer and my sweaters and my sad little heaters. Stop being a problem. Stop being a guest. A guest who keeps roaming the house makes the host uneasy. A guest who takes the room she is given and stays in it is no trouble at all. I moved into the sewing room in the last week of December. I moved the space heaters in first, out of habit, and then laughed at myself. Actually laughed out loud alone in the warm little room because I did not need them. The room was warm. The room had always been going to be warm. That was the whole point of the room. I brought my pillow and my quilts to the daybed. I brought the lamp from the front room, walking fast through the cold to get it, and it fit fine on the boxes by the window. I brought a few books. I'd brought the thermometer, and I set it on the windowsill, and it read 70. And it has read 70 ever since, day and night, rain or clear, while the rest of the house behind the door reads. Whatever the dead cold reads, 40, 45, I do not check anymore. There is no reason to check anymore. I live in the sewing room now. I have for a while. I keep the door shut, not against the cold, though it does keep the cold out, but because with the door shut, the room is complete. It is a whole small world, warm and lit and enough, and I do not have to see the hall beyond it, going blue dark, with a chill that is not the furnace's fault. The furnace still runs. I still pay the bill, which is enormous now, heating a house that will not hold heat, and I have thought about turning it off, letting the pipes freeze. But I do not. Let it run. Let it pour warmth into all those cold rooms that will not take it. The warmth has to go somewhere. I know now where it goes. A woman came to the door once in November, and I have thought about it since more than almost anything. Not a friend. I do not have many of those left, but a woman from the church I go to sometimes, bringing a dish around the way they do when they have decided you are alone and ought to be checked on. She came in out of the rain, and I took her wet coat and I brought her into the kitchen because it was the least cold room that day. And I put the kettle on, and Carol sat at my table and talked, and about 10 minutes in, I watched her change. She did not say anything for a while. She kept talking about the church, about her grandchildren, but she had pulled her cardigan closed and folded her arms, and her shoulders had crept up, and she kept glancing, just glancing, toward the doorway to the hall, the way you glance at a door you think you heard open. And finally she said, and she tried to make it casual, she said, "Is your heat working all right, hun? It feels a little." And she did not finish. She just moved her hand in the air, a little, "What?" She could not say. And I told her the furnace was fine, which was true, and I did not tell her the rest, because what was there to tell? And Carol drank half her tea and remembered somewhere she had to be, and she took her dish back, which people do not do. They leave the dish, and she went out into the rain faster than she had come in. She has not been back. She waves at church, but she has not been back, and I do not blame her, because she felt it. In 10 minutes, she felt what I had taken 2 months to name, that the house was occupied, that there was a coldness in it, that had a shape and an attention, and her body knew to leave before her mind could argue. I have envied her that ever since. She got to leave. I stopped opening the refrigerator around then, or rather, I noticed I had stopped needing to. The cold rooms kept things as well as any icebox. I found I had drifted into leaving the milk on the counter of the cold kitchen, the butter, the leftovers covered with a plate, and none of it spoiled, because the kitchen held a steady, deep chill now that the furnace could not touch, and it seemed wasteful somehow to run the refrigerator inside a room that was already a refrigerator. It is a small thing, but it was the moment I understood I had begun to live in the house the way it wanted to be lived in, using the cold rooms for cold storage, the way you would in a cabin, keeping to the one warm room for living, the way Mrs. Beeses, Pruitt and her husband had kept to the back, the way the house had always, I think now, been meant to be used by whoever it belonged to and whoever it merely let stay. I was keeping house again. That was the terrible ordinary comfort of it, after all the strangeness I had come around to keeping house, adapting, making the practical accommodation, the thing I have always been good at. Only now I was keeping the house for something else, and keeping to my one room in it, and calling that getting by. My sister called it Christmas, the first time in 2 years, some softening in her, and I did not tell her any of this. I told her I was fine. The house was fine. I was keeping cozy in the back room by the window, and the rain was nice. All of which was true. That is the thing about it, that everything I could say was true, and none of it was the truth. I am cozy in the back room. The rain is nice. I have everything I need in here. The lamp, the daybed, the window, the warmth, my few books, the sound of the rain when it comes, which it does most nights now. That soft, steady sound that lies over the whole cold house like a hand and lets me not think about the cold house. I am comfortable. I have never in my life been so comfortable and so aware that the comfort is not mine, that it was given to me, that I am being kept comfortable, the way you keep a thing quiet. Some nights I hear the house, not footsteps. I want to be honest and not make it more than it is. Not footsteps, nothing so clear as that, but the ticks and settles of a big house at night, the sounds I have known for 19 years and could always name. They do not sound the same to me anymore from in here. They sound like a house being lived in. Not by me. I lie on the daybed in the warm with the rain going, and I listen to my house being comfortably occupied by something that has finally got the run of the place, that spreads out now into all the rooms it wanted, that has the good chair and the window seat and the wide bed I used to sleep in, and I do not go and look, because I know what it is like to be in a warm room when someone comes to the door, how it spoils the comfort, how you want to say sorry and back it. I would not do that to it. It has been, in its way, a good host. It gave me the warm room. It could have given me nothing. I keep the door shut and the lamp on, and I stay where I am put. In the morning, the rain is usually still going and the window shows me the wet yard and the gray light, and the room is warm, and I make my tea on the little kettle. I moved in here and I drink it on the daybed, and I do not go out into the cold house any more than I have to. There is less and less that I have to. I have made this room enough. That is a thing I am good at, making a small thing enough, keeping house in whatever house I am given, and this is the house I am given now. This one room, warm and shut and quiet, and I keep it well. I keep it the way I have kept every house. I am a practical woman. I take the room I am given and I make it a home, and I do not make a fuss, and I say sorry, and I stay out of the rooms that are not mine, which is all of them now, which is every room but this one, and this one it lets me have. Rest now, if you are listening. It is only the rain on the roof. It is only the house settling, the way houses do. Whatever room you are in tonight, it is warm, and the door is shut, and that is enough. That is enough. Stay where it is warm. There is no reason to get up and walk the cold rooms counting the degrees. There is no reason to go and see what has the run of the house while you sleep. Stay in the warm room. It is the one you are given. It is enough. Story 3. The guest book. I want to set this down the way I was trained to set things down, which is plainly and in order, and without the parts that are only feeling. For 19 years I kept the records room at the county clerk's office. I logged deeds and marriages and the small legal deaths of ordinary people, and I learned that a record does not care whether you believe it. It simply is. A record is patient in a way that has nothing to do with mercy. I have kept that habit my whole life, and I am keeping it now, tonight, with the rain coming down soft and steady on the roof and the lamp on beside me. because it is the only way I know to stay calm enough to write at all. So, the facts dated where I can date them. I bought this house in the early spring. It is a tall, narrow house at the end of a street that used to be a road, in a town that used to be a stop on a line that no longer runs. The listing called it a former lodging house, which was the polite way of saying that for most of its life, strangers had slept here and moved on. That did not bother me. I had spent my career among the papers of strangers. A house full of them seemed almost like company. The rain that first night was gentle, the way it is gentle tonight, and I remember thinking that the sound of it on the old roof was the most restful thing I had heard in years. I slept well. I want that understood. Whatever came later, the house was kind to my sleep from the very beginning. It never once frightened me in the ordinary way, with a bang or a shadow. What it did was quieter, and it took longer, and by the time I understood it, there was nothing loud left in me to make. I found the book on the third day. It was in the front room, in the bottom of a built-in cabinet beside the cold fireplace, under a folded moving blanket that was not mine, and that I did not remember the previous owners leaving. The book was a register. Anyone who has worked in records knows the kind on site. Leather over boards, the corners gone soft with handling, a cloth ribbon sewn into the spine to mark a place. On the cover, pressed into the leather in a plain serif, was one word: Gusts. Nothing else. No name of an inn, no year, no town, just the word, and the weight of the thing in my hands, which was more than a book that size should weigh. I opened it at the ribbon. The pages were ruled in 3 columns, the way a good register is. A column for the name. A column headed Arrived. A column headed Departed. The ink was many different inks, and the hands were many different hands, some copperplate and careful, some hardly more than a scrawl, some in pencil gone silver with age. The entries ran back, when I turned to the front, further than the house could possibly be old. The earliest date I could read clearly was 1791. That is not possible for this house, which the county says was built in 1868. I noted that. I am a person who notes things. I told myself the book had simply been carried here from somewhere older, the way such things are, and I set it on the mantel and made my tea and did not think about it again until the evening. In the evening, I read it properly, the way you read a document you intend to understand. Here is what a register is supposed to do. A guest arrives. Someone writes the name and the date of arrival. The guest stays some nights. The guest leaves, and someone writes the date of departure, and now the line is closed. A small, complete account of a small, complete visit. That is the entire logic of the thing. Name, in, out. I have filled thousands of lines like it in my life. There is a plain comfort in a closed line. It means the matter is finished and filed. Most of the lines in the book were closed. Ann Petrie. Arrived, departed, 4 nights. The hand neat. A family of the name Coyle arrived together, departed together, a single week one autumn in the 1890s. A traveling man named only as J.A.J. Beck, who came and went 11 times across 3 years. A regular, someone the house had known. Line after line after line of arrivals and their matching departures. The whole slow traffic of a lodging house, everyone accounted for, everyone gone on. But not every line was closed. Some lines had a name and an arrival, and then nothing in the 3rd column at all. A blank where the departure should be. And I want to be precise about what that means to someone who reads registers for a living, because to me it did not read as an oversight. A blank departure means the account is still open. It means, in the plain grammar of the book, that the guest has not left. That the guest is still here. I counted the open lines that first evening. There were 9 of them, scattered back through 2 centuries. 9 names with arrivals and no departures. 9 guests, by the logic of the book, who had come to this house and never checked out. I wrote the 9 names on a card, because that is what I do. And I put the card in my pocket, and I told myself that old ledgers are full of unclosed lines, that clerks die and clerks forget and pages get torn, and that a missing date is only a missing date. I believed that for exactly one more day. The next morning there was a new line. I need to be careful here, because this is the hinge of the whole account, and I do not want to overstate it. I had left the book open on the mantel to the last written page. When I came down in the morning, gray light, the rain just starting again soft on the glass, there was one more entry below, the one that had been last. The ink was fresh enough that when I touched it lightly, with one finger, the very edge of it smeared. Wet. Written in the night. The name meant nothing to me. A woman's name, a common one, the kind of name that is on 100 deeds in any county in this country. The A-arrived column beside it held a date. The date was 3 weeks in the future. I am going to say that again, plainly, because it took me a long time to let myself say it even once. The book had recorded a guest arriving 3 weeks from the day I read it. It had written down, in advance, in wet ink, the arrival of someone who had not yet arrived. The departure column beside her name was blank. A person is allowed one strange morning. I gave myself that. I decided I had misread an old date, that a 7 was a 1, that the light was bad. I photographed the page, which I should have done from the first, and I closed the book and put it back in the cabinet under the blanket, and I went about the ordinary business of a woman settling a new house. I hung curtains. I met the man 2 doors down, a widower named Mr. Don, Alvy, who kept a garden, and asked kindly how I was finding the old place. I said I was finding it very restful. That was true. I did not tell him about the book. You do not tell a new neighbor that your house keeps a register of the future. You would not be restful company for long. But I am, before anything else, a person who verifies. That is the whole of what I am. And so over the following days, I did the thing my training would not let me not do. I took the 9 open names, the guests with no departures, and I looked them up. The records office 2 towns over let me sit with the old census sheets and the burial rolls because I had worked in that world my whole life, and they knew me, and it cost them nothing. And I found them. Not all 9, but 6 of the 9. 6 of the people whose lines in the book had no departure date. Every single one of the 6 that I could trace had gone missing, not died. There is a burial record for a death, a plot, a closed account. These 6 had simply, at some point after the arrival dates written in the book, stopped appearing anywhere. A boarder here in 1912, present on one census, absent on the next, no death recorded, no move recorded, no forwarding, nothing. A young man in the 1940s arrived per the book, then a small notice in a paper of the time asking anyone with word of his whereabouts to come forward. Nobody, it seemed, ever had. 6 open lines, 6 people the world had lost track of, and the book, in its plain 3 columns, had them all filed under this address, arrived and never departed. Their accounts still open, their stays, in the only language the book spoke, still going on. I sat in that records office a long time. I understood, sitting there, that I had crossed from a strange morning into something that a photograph on my phone was not going to explain away, and I did the only thing that has ever steadied me in my life, which is that I decided to keep a record of the record. If the book was going to write, I would write too. I would date everything. I would verify what could be verified. I would be, to this thing, exactly what I had been to 19 years of deeds and deaths, which is a careful and unfrightened witness. I told myself that a witness is safe. A witness only watches and writes. I know now that this was the book teaching me my place, and that I walked to it gratefully. But I did not know it then. There is one more thing I did in that records office, and I have gone back and forth about whether to include it, because it is the detail that first made a colleague of mine go quiet and stop meeting my eye. The register 2 towns over keeps its own guest log, the visitor sign in at the front counter. A humble thing, a clipboard really, where anyone who comes to sit with the old sheets prints a name and a date. It is required. It is nothing, but out of the habit of my whole life I turned back through it while I was there, idly, the way you tidy a stack of papers while you think. And I found, some 4 visits back, before I'd ever set foot in that office in my life, a line in the sign-in that read my name. My full name, the middle one included, dated a Tuesday in a month I had not yet lived. The clerk on duty had no memory of it. The handwriting was even and unhurried and did not press. I stood at that counter a long time. I understood that the book was not confined to the house. The house only held it. The book itself went where it liked and signed me in ahead of myself and left the ink to dry and waited for me to arrive and make it true. I did not tell the clerk. I only closed the clipboard, gently, the way you close something over a sleeper, and I drove home in the soft rain, and I did not turn on the radio because I did not want any other voice in the car with the fact I was carrying. Let me give the entries as they came, dated the 9th of the month. The future arrival, the woman with the common name, 3 weeks out. Departure blank. I began a page of my own on plain notebook and I copied her in. The 11th. A second future line appeared overnight, again in ink still faintly wet at the edge in the morning. A man's name this time, arrival dated for the autumn, some 5 months ahead. Departure blank. I copied him in. I noticed and noted that the hand of these 2 future entries was not the same as any of the old hands in the book. It was a plain, even, unhurried hand. It did not press hard. It had nothing to prove. It wrote the way a person writes who has never once been interrupted, who has never had to hurry a line before someone takes the pen. I have thought about that hand more than almost anything else. It is the calmest handwriting I have ever seen. There is no cruelty in it at all. That is the part I cannot get anyone to understand. There is no cruelty in it. It is only writing things down. The 14th. I tried an experiment, the way you test a claim before you record it as fact. The book had written a future arrival, so I would prevent it. The first future line, the woman, was dated for the end of the month. I resolved that on that day, I would not let her in. I would lock the house. I would sit in the front room with the book on my knees and the door bolted, and when no one arrived, I would have my proof that the book could be wrong, that a written date is only a wish, and that I was free. I want to record what actually happened on that day, because it is the day I stopped being able to lie to myself. The end of the month came. It rained, softly, all day, the good rain, the kind you sleep to. I bolted the door in the morning. I sat with the book. I told no one. I did not eat much. I watched the arrived date beside her name as though watching it could hold it still. And in the middle of the afternoon, with the door still bolted and no knock and no car and no footstep on the path, the departed column beside her name filled in. Not the arrival, the departure. While I sat there guarding the door against her coming, the book quietly closed her line. Arrived, the date at the end of the month, today. Departed, a date some 11 days after. Her whole visit, beginning to end, written out complete, while she never crossed my threshold and I never let her in. Because, and I understood this slowly, sitting very still with the rain on the glass, the book had never needed my door. My door was not the door it meant. The arriving and the departing it recorded were not arrivals at my house. They were arrivals somewhere the book kept the register for, and the house I had bought was only the place the register happened to be resting, the way a ledger rests on a shelf between the times a hand reaches for it. I had thought I was the keeper of the book. I understood, that afternoon, that I was closer to one of its pages. I did one more thing before I let that day close, because a single instance is an anecdote, and I have never in my life let an anecdote stand in for a fact. The next morning, the first of a new month, I made myself a second test, colder than the first. If the door meant nothing, then perhaps the book itself was the thing to remove. I would take it out of the house. I would carry it to the middle of the river bridge at the edge of town, and I would hold it over the rail. And if the book was only a book, it would fall like a book and be gone, and the writing would stop. I did carry it. I want that recorded, because I am not a person who only sits and notes. I walked it down the wet street in a canvas bag under the soft rain, and I stood at the rail of the bridge with my hands on it, and I found that I could not make my hands let go. And I want to be exact about why, because it was not fear and it was not reverence. It was the plain professional certainty, bone deep in me after 19 years, that you do not destroy a record, that destroying the record does not undo the thing the record records. It only removes the proof and leaves the fact standing alone in the dark where no one can read it. My arrival had happened. My open line was true whether the book existed or not. Dropping it in the river would not close my account. It would only mean that when the departure came or did not come, there would be no page left to tell me which. I carried the book home. I dried it by the fire. I put it back in the cabinet under the blanket, and I understood that I had not spared the book. The book had spared me the illusion that I had any power over it, and had let me learn that on my own, at the rail, in my own time, in the gentle rain, which is the only way it ever teaches anything. I did not sleep that night, though the rain tried to give it to me. I lay awake and did what I do, which is put things in order. Here is the order I put them in. 1. The book records guests. Not guests of this house. Guests of something the house merely holds the book for. 2. It records the past and the future in the same 3 columns, in the same plain hand for the entries still to come, because to the book there is no difference between the two. A departure 5 months out is as settled, as already filed, as one from 1791. The future is not a thing the book predicts. It is a thing the book has already written and is simply letting the rest of us catch up to. 3. An open line, a blank departure, does not mean a guest who left without signing out. It means a guest who is not finished. A guest whose stay is, by the book's plain grammar, still going on. There were 9 of those when I found it, and I understood, lying there, that being still here and being lost to the world were, in the register's accounting, the same condition. The 6 I had traced had not died. Their accounts were still open. Somewhere, in the only sense the book meant, they were still guests. I got up before dawn. I went down to the cold front room and I opened the book because I could not know. I turned to the last written page. The 2 future lines were there, the woman's now closed, the man's still open, and below them, in that same calm, unhurried hand, the edge of it still faintly wet, there was a new entry that had not been there the night before. It was my name. My full name, the name on the deed, spelled correctly, including the middle name I never use, and that is not on my mail, and that a stranger would have no way to know. Beside it, in the ARIV column, a date. The date was the early spring. It was the day I moved into this house. The book had gone back and written my arrival not as of the night it wrote it, but as of the true day I came, as though I had been a guest here from the first, and it was only now getting around to entering me, filling in a line that had, in some sense, the book understood, and I did not, been waiting open for me since March. The debit column beside my name was blank. I have looked at that blank a great many times since. I want to describe exactly what I feel when I look at it, because it is not what a person would expect, and the difference matters. I do not feel hunted. Nothing in this house has ever chased me. I do not feel hated. There is no hate in that even, patient hand. What I feel, looking at the blank beside my name, is the particular vertigo of reading your own name in a record you did not write and cannot amend. I have handed people their own documents across a counter for 19 years. I have watched them go pale reading a date they did not choose, a name spelled a way they did not spell it, a fact about their own lives filed by a stranger and now permanent. I always thought their fear was of the content. I know now it is of the filing itself. To be written down by something that does not need your consent to write you is to learn all at once that you were always an entry, that you did not begin the account, and you will not close it. Someone else holds the pen and has held it the whole time, and is not cruel, and is not kind, and is only evenly keeping the register. My rival was correct. My middle name was correct. The book was not guessing at me. It knew me the way it knew the border of 1912, which is to say completely and with no more feeling than a page has for the ink it holds. I closed the book. I made tea. My hands, I noted, were steady, which surprised me and then did not, because steadiness is the one skill I have in this thing. Whatever else it was doing had left it to me. I went back to my records. There was more to verify, and verifying is the only prayer I know. I looked again, more carefully this time, at the closed lines, the ordinary ones, the guests who arrived and departed and were filed and finished. And I found something I had not looked for the first time, because the first time I had not known to fear a completed line. I cross-checked the departures. I took a dozen of the closed lines, guests with a clean arrival and a clean departure, everyone accounted for, and I traced them the way I had traced the open ones. And they were fine. That is the word. They were fine. They arrived, they stayed, they departed on the date written, and then they went on and lived and died like anyone, married, moved, were buried under their own headstones with their own dates, closed accounts, complete. A closed line in the book was a guest who had finished their stay and been let go back into the ordinary world to finish the rest of an ordinary life. An open line was a guest who never got that far. I made one more cross-check because the pattern was too clean, and a clean pattern is exactly the thing a careful person must try hardest to break. I wondered whether the closed lines were only the ones the world happened to have kept, and the open ones only the ones the world happened to have lost, and that I was mistaking the ordinary gaps of old paper for a design. So I did it the other way. Instead of starting from the book, I started from the town. I took the county's list of its own quiet, unsolved absences, the people who over 2 centuries had simply stopped being anywhere, the ones with no grave and no forwarding, the short, sad column every old county keeps and does not like to discuss, and I checked each of them against the register. And every one of them that had ever, in any record, been placed at this address, or on this street, or even passing through this town in the season of their vanishing, was in the book. In the book, with an arrival and no departure. An open line. Not one of them was among the closed. The pattern held from both directions, which is the only kind of pattern I trust, and it told me the same flat thing twice. The book does not lose people. It keeps them. Losing is what the world outside the book calls it when the book decides not to write a departure. And my line was open. I understood then what the departure date is for. It is not the day you leave the house. The woman I tried to lock out never entered the house. It is the day the register lets you go. The day it closes your account and releases you back into being an ordinary person to whom ordinary things happen. The people without departures did not get it, and they are, in the book's plain and patient present tense, guests still. Not dead. Guests. Still here, in the sense the book means here, which is not a place on any map I could photograph. I did not want an open line. I wanted, more than I have wanted anything, a date in that third column. Any date, a departure, a release, the small mercy of a closed account. I understand exactly how strange it is to say that the thing I came to long for was to be checked out of a register by the same power that had written me into it without my leave. But that is the truth, and I said I would keep to the truth. I wanted to be let go. I wanted to be finished and filed and free, and there was nothing I could do to earn it, because I had never held the pen, and the hand that did held it evenly, and was not moved by wanting. For a while, I will be honest about this stretch, though it does me no credit. I tried to make the departure come. I reasoned that if the book responded to nothing I did with the door, perhaps it responded to something I did with myself. I kept the house perfectly. I thought maybe a guest is released when the visit has been, in some way, complete, and so I tried to make my stay complete, to be a good guest, to leave nothing undone. I wrote letters I had been putting off for years. I mended the fence. I made peace over Mr. Alvy's garden wall with a coldness that had been in me a long time, and he was gentle about it and never knew he was helping me try to earn a date in a book he could not see. I did every small unfinished thing in my life, one after another, thinking, now close me. Now I am done. Let me go. Each morning I went down to the cold room and turned to my line, and each morning the departure column beside my name was blank, and the hand had not been there in the night, and the book was patient in the exact way a record is patient, which is that it does not respond to effort because it is not in a conversation with you. You cannot persuade a register. It is not withholding the date. The date is simply not the kind of thing that comes when you are good. Whatever decides it elsewhere, on terms I was never shown, and my letters and my mended fence were nothing to it. Small closings of small accounts, while the one account I wanted closed stayed open in a hand that had never once hurried and never once cared. I tried, once, to write in it myself. I need to record that, and record what came of it, because it is the clearest measure I have of what I was dealing with. Late one night, I took my own pen, a good one, black ink, the pen I had signed 1,000 real documents with, and I set the nib beside my name in the departed column, and I wrote a date. A near one. I wrote myself a departure. I pressed it in firmly, the way you press a thing you mean, and I blotted it, and I closed the book, and I went up to bed almost lightheaded, thinking that perhaps that was all it had ever wanted, a date. Any date, and that a record does not care whose hand supplies it so long as the column is filled. I slept, and the rain was soft, and in the morning I went down to see myself released. My date was gone, not crossed out, not smeared, gone, as though the paper had never held it, the column beside my name as clean and open as it had been the day the book wrote me in, and underneath, in the margin, not as a rebuke, not underlined, not angry, in that same even and unhurried and faintly wet hand, there was one short line the book had added in the night. It said only, not for the guest to enter. I have thought about the courtesy of that word, guest, more than I can say. It did not call me a prisoner. It did not call me a fool. It called me a guest, which is what I am, and it corrected my column the way a clerk quietly corrects a form. A member of the public has filled in wrong, without heat, without contempt, because the public cannot be expected to know the procedures, and it is no one's fault, and the form simply has to be right. You cannot check yourself out. That is not the guest's line to fill. I put my good pen away. I did not try again. The rain, all this while, was kind. I want that in the record too, because it is the strangest tenderness of this whole account, and I have decided it is not an accident. The nights this house has given me have been the softest sleep of my life. The rain comes down on the old roof the way it is coming down now, even and low, and the house holds the warm and lets the lamp be gold. And I have lain in that bed and felt more at rest than I ever felt in the loud middle of my life when I still believed I was the one keeping the records. There is no torment here. That is what I most need. Whoever reads this to understand, the book is not tormenting me. A thing that meant to torment me would have shown me my departure date and let me count down to it. This does not count down. It does not threaten. It rests its book on my mantle and lets me sleep soft under its rain, and simply, without heat, keeps my line open, keeps me a guest. And there is in that indifference a peace so total that some nights I have to remind myself, on purpose, in plain words, that being at peace inside a thing that does not care about you is not the same as being safe. I write that sentence out some nights just to be sure I still believe it. I'm not always sure I still do. I made one last verification. I did not want to make it. I made it because I am what I am. I turned one gray morning past my own open line to see whether the book had written anything after me. A register does not stop. Guests keep arriving. I knew there might be more. There was one more line. Below mine, in the same calm and unhurried and faintly wet hand, one more entry. A name. It is not a name I know. I have looked. The way I look at everything, and I cannot place it. And I have decided that this is because it does not belong to anyone yet. That it is, like the woman and the man before me, a guest still to come, filed already in the book's flat present, where the future and the past lie down together. And there is no difference between what has happened beside the name and our arrived date. I will not write the date here. I will only say that it is not far, and that it falls a little after mine would, if mine had one, and that the departed comb beside it is blank, the way mine is blank, the way all the open lines are blank, one below the other now, a small quiet column of guests who have not finished and will not soon. I have thought a great deal about that line after mine. Here is where it has left me, and I will set it down plainly, and then I will stop, because the lamp is low and the rain is even, and I am, despite everything, so ready to sleep. I used to believe the worst thing a record could tell you was your own name in it. I was wrong. The worst thing a record can tell you is the name that comes after yours, because my own open line, terrible as it is at least about me. And a person can bear almost anything that is only about themselves. But the line after mine is proof of the one fact I had been keeping at arm's length with all my careful verifying, all my dating and cross-checking, all my good guess letters and my mended fence. It is proof that I am not special to the book, that I am not its purpose, not its prisoner, not the one it wanted. I am one line. There was a page of them before me, and there is a name already inked below me, and there will be a name below that, and the hand will not press any harder for any of us. And the rain will be just as soft for whoever sleeps here after me, and the book will go on keeping its even and unhurried account long after my open line has scrolled up into the ordinary company of the others, the boarder of 1912, the young man of the 1940s. I do not think anything is coming to the door. I have stopped watching the door. Nothing about this was ever going to arrive with a knock. It was here before me, and it entered me into itself the day I moved in, and it has been keeping me gently in its book ever since. And the only thing that was ever going to happen is the thing that is happening, which is that my line stays open and the register goes on. So I am doing the last thing left to a records clerk, which is to add my own account to the file, this account, the one you are reading, so that there will be a witness statement folded into the leather beside the guests. I have written it plainly and in order. I have dated what I could date. I have kept the parts that are only feeling as few as I can bear to keep them, and I have failed at that in places, and I am too tired now to go back and cut them out. If you are reading this, you are in the tall, narrow house at the end of the street that used to be a road. You have found the book under the blanket in the cabinet by the cold fireplace. You have opened it to the ribbon and read the 3 columns and told yourself that a missing date is only a missing date. Do not waste the days I wasted trying to earn a departure. It does not come because you are good. Do not lock the door on the dates it writes. The door is not the door it means. Just do what I did in the end, which is the only thing there is to do. Keep the record. Date what you can. Sleep when the rain gives it to you, because it will, softly. And there is no shame in taking the rest, even from a thing that does not love you. And when you turn past your own open line, you will. You are the kind who turns the page. The book only comes to people who read registers. And you find one more name below yours in that calm and faintly wet hand. Do not look for it in the census sheets the way I looked for mine. It will not be there. Not yet. It is only a guest who has not arrived. Close the book. Put it back under the blanket. Leave the lamp on if it helps you, the way I am leaving it on now. The account is open. It stays open. Rest now. The rain has the roof, and the book has the rest, and neither of them is in any hurry at all. Story 4, The Second Nursery. The rain started a little after 9 that first night, and I remember being glad of it. Not a storm, nothing to keep anyone awake. Just a soft, steady rain that came in off the fields behind our development and settled over the roof like a hand laid flat on a sleeping back. If you have ever lived in a house at the edge of where the town stops, you know that particular sound. It fills up all the small silences a house makes, and it makes the whole world feel like it has agreed to be quiet with you. I had waited a long time for a quiet like that. I want you to understand that before I tell you the rest, because I need you to know that the house was good to us at the start. The trouble did not come from the rain. The rain only made it easier to hear. We had been in the house 11 weeks when I first heard the other room. My daughter was 4 months old then. Her name was Nora, and she was the kind of baby who did not sleep so much as negotiate with sleep, drifting toward it and then jerking back over and over until she finally lost the argument sometime near midnight. I had learned her rhythms the way you learn a language you never chose to study. I knew her hungry cry from her tired cry, her wet cry from the cry that meant nothing at all except that she had discovered she was alone in the dark and did not care for it. I knew all of them. I could have picked her out of a room of 100 crying children with my eyes shut. That is the thing about being someone's mother in those first months. Your whole body becomes a receiver tuned to one small frequency, and you never fully turn it off again, not for the rest of your life. The monitor came with the house, in a way. The previous owners had left a box of odds and ends in the hall closet, the way people do. The things not worth packing and not quite worth throwing out. A drawer organizer, a single curtain hook, and a baby monitor, the audio kind, older than the video ones everybody buys now. Just a white plastic unit for the nursery and a matching handset that you carry with you through the house. I almost put it out with the recycling, but Marcus, my husband, said it might save us buying one. And money was tight the way it is tight for everyone in the first year of a house and a baby at the same time. So I wiped it down and I plugged the little transmitter in on the shelf above Nora's crib, and I clipped the handset to the waistband of my pajamas, and that was that. It worked fine. I could hear her breathe from the far side of the house. On the nights the rain was loud, I could turn the volume up and still hear the soft in and out of her, and it was, God help me, the most peaceful sound I have ever known. The first night, I thought I had imagined it. I was in the kitchen, past midnight, doing the thing you do when a baby has finally gone down and you are too tired to sleep and too wired to stop moving. Wiping counters that were already clean, rinsing bottles. The rain was coming down soft against the window over the sink, and the handset was on the counter beside me, and out of it came the sound of Nora settling. That little wet mouth sound, the sigh, the shift of small limbs against a fitted sheet. I smiled at it without even meaning to. And then, underneath it, very far away, there was another one. I want to be careful here, because when I say it now, it sounds like nothing. It was another baby settling, the same kind of sound Nora made, the same soft shifting and sighing, but thinner and set back somehow, the way a voice sounds when it comes from a room 2 doors down and around a corner. Like there was Nora, close and warm, and then behind her, at the bottom of a long hallway that the monitor should not have been able to reach, there was a second child, doing the same thing at the same time. I stood very still with a bottle brush in my hand. I told myself it was an echo. Old monitor, cheap speaker, some trick of the electronics doubling the sound. That is a real thing. I had read about it later, when I started reading about everything. These older units, the analog ones, they run on a handful of channels, and if a neighbor has the same brand, you can pick up their nursery through the wall of the air, so to speak. It happens. People online tell stories about hearing a stranger's baby, a stranger's argument, a stranger's television, all bleeding onto the same little frequency. So there was an explanation ready and waiting for me, and I took it, the way you take a coat someone hands you at the door when you are cold. I took it, and I put it on, and I finished the bottles, and I went to bed. But I lay awake a while, listening to the rain, and I could not stop thinking about how the second baby had not been an echo. An echo comes after. This had come at the same time. When Nora sighed, the other one sighed with her. Not after. With. I did not tell Marcus. There was nothing to tell. It was 4 nights before I heard it again, and by then I had almost convinced myself the first time had been the exhaustion talking. Everyone knows you hear things when you have not slept. The mind fills the quiet with company, but the 5th night the rain came back, soft and steady off the fields, and I was in the nursery doorway checking on Nora before my own bed, and the handset was on the dresser, and out of it, clear as anything, came a lullaby. Not from Nora's crib. Nora was asleep. I was looking right at her, her chest going up and down, her fists up by her ears the way she slept. The room was silent except for her breathing, but the handset on the dresser, the little speaker that was supposed to carry only what the transmitter above her crib picked up, was playing a lullaby. A woman humming, low and slow, and just slightly off from any tune I knew, the way a song is when you are hearing it through a wall, and your brain is filling in the notes it misses. It was the sound of a mother in another room, settling a child that was not mine, in a nursery that was not here. I picked up the handset, I held it to my ear like a shell, and the humming went on, unbothered, tender, patient, in the way that has nothing to do with kindness, and under the humming I could hear the small sounds of a baby giving in to sleep. A little fuss, a little settling, the creak of a chair, the kind of chair you rock a child in, and the woman humming, and then, so soft I almost lost it under the rain, the woman said a word. I could not make it out, but it was said the way you say a name. I put the handset down and I walked through my whole house. You have to picture it. It is a 2-story house, nothing special, the 4th of 6 on a cul-de-sac, the kind of layout they build 1,000 of. Downstairs, the kitchen, the living room, the little half bath, the front hall. Upstairs, our bedroom, Nora's room, the guest room we still called the office, and the full bath between them. That is the entire house. There is no other nursery. There is no chair that rocks. There is no woman humming. I walked every room with the handset held out in front of me like a man looking for water with a stick, and in every room the humming was the same distance away. It did not get louder in any room. It did not get softer. It was always just there, always just behind the wall, no matter which wall I stood against, as if the room it came from was not in any direction I could walk, as if it was folded into the house at an angle that the house did not have. I stood in the upstairs hall for a long time. And I will tell you, the thing I have never told anyone, the thing that started it. Standing there in the dark hallway with the rain on the roof and the humming in my hand, I did not feel afraid. I felt the way you feel when you come home. There was a woman somewhere just out of reach, humming a baby down to sleep, and every cell in my tired, milk-drunk, 4 months without a full night body wanted to go to her, wanted to find the room, wanted to sit in the chair I could hear creaking and take up the humming myself. It was the most natural pull in the world, and that is exactly what frightened me later, when I understood. It never once came at me. It never had to. It only ever called me toward it. And it knew. It knew from the first night that a tired mother in the dark is the easiest thing in the world to call. I unplugged the monitor. I told myself I would buy a new one, a video one, in the morning, and I went to bed and I held Marcus's warm back against my front and I listened to the rain until it took me under. In the morning, it was all very stupid and small, the way night things are. I did not buy a new monitor. Money, again, and also a kind of embarrassment, as if buying a new one would be admitting something. I plugged the old one back in that evening because Nora was fussy and I needed to be able to hear her from the kitchen while I ate a plate of food standing up, and the handset gave me nothing but my own daughter, breathing, sighing, and the rain. 2 nights of that. 3. Just Nora. I began to feel foolish for the walk through the house. I told Marcus a version of it, finally made it a funny story. The old monitor picking up interference, the neighbor's white noise machine probably, or a truck radio. He laughed. He said the previous owners probably heard the same thing and that was why they left it in the closet. He meant it as a joke. I laughed too. But I thought about it after he was asleep. I thought, they left it in the closet. They did not throw it away. They left it in the house. The humming came back on the first rainy night after that. And after that, it came back every rainy night. And only on rainy nights. And I stopped being able to pretend. It was never the same, which is one of the things I want you to understand. If it had been a recording, a loop, some snagged frequency playing the same 30 seconds over and over, I could have lived with it. A machine repeating itself is only a machine. But it was never the same. Some nights the baby in the other room was already asleep when I first picked up the handset, and all I got was the deep, even breathing of a child down for the night, and the small sounds a nursery makes around a sleeping child, the tick of a radiator, the settle of a house. Some nights the baby was fighting it, fussing and winding up toward a real cry, and the woman would hum harder, faster, the way you do when you are close to getting there and you do not want to lose it. Some nights she talked, low and warm, and I could never quite make out the words, except that they were the words you say to a baby, the nonsense words, the sweet ones. And every so often, that one word said like a name. And then one night I understood the name. Nora had a cold, her first one, and she was miserable with it, and I'd been up and down the stairs half the night with the humidifier and the little blue bulb syringe and the endless patience that a sick baby wrings out of you until there is nothing left. Somewhere past 2, I sat down on the floor of her room with my back against the crib and I closed my eyes just for a second, just to rest them, and the handset was in my lap. And through the fog of no sleep, I heard the woman in the other room, humming, and then, clear as a bell, clearer than she had ever been, she said, "Nora, come lie down now, Nora. It's late." My eyes came open. My own daughter was above me in the crib, awake, snuffling, watching me with her wet, unhappy eyes. Nora. My Nora. And the woman in the room that was not there had said her name in a voice so tender it made my throat ache. And she had said, "Come lie down." And for one long, floating, terrible second I did not know which of us she meant. Because I was Nora too, once. Because every woman is a tired child somebody once wanted to put to sleep. Because the pull I told you about, the come home pull, it went straight through me, and it did not care that I was 34 years old and a mother myself. Come lie down now. It's late. And God, I was tired. You have no idea, unless you have been there, how tired. I picked up my daughter instead. I picked up my real Nora, snot and tears and all, and I held her against my chest so hard she squawked, and I said out loud, into the dark, "No." Just that. No. And the humming stopped. Not faded. Stopped the way a person stops when they have heard you, and the handset gave me nothing but the rain, and my daughter's stuffed up breathing, and I sat on the floor of her room until the window went gray. And I did not sleep at all. I want to tell you, I stopped using the monitor then. I did not. I need you to sit with why. Because it is the whole thing, the whole reason it had me, the whole reason it was never in any hurry. It was because of Nora. I could not leave her alone in that room in the dark and not be able to hear her. That was not a thing I was capable of. Whatever was in the house, whatever was folded into the walls humming its baby to sleep, it had learned the one thing about me that could not be undone, which is that I could not stop listening for my child. It did not need to break a door. It did not need to come down the hall. It only needed me to keep the receiver on because I could not keep it on, because to turn it off was to go deaf to Nora. And no mother does that willingly. And the thing knew it, the way it knew everything, the way it had known my daughter's name. So I kept it on. And I set rules for myself, the way you do when you are trying to hold a shape in a situation that has none. I would not answer it. I would not talk back to it. I would not, no matter how it hummed, get up and walk toward the sound. If it started, I would go to Nora's actual room, put my hand on her actual back, feel her actual breathing, and stay there in the real with the real child until it gave up for the night. Those were my rules. I told myself they were enough. For a while they were. I did the sensible things too, in the daylight, because I am a sensible person, or I was. I read everything. I learned more about analog baby monitors than any human being should carry around in her head. I learned the channels they use, the megahertz, the way they can bleed across from a neighbor's unit, the way old ones pick up cordless phones and radios and, yes, sometimes, a stranger's home. I knocked on doors. I did. I asked the neighbors, casual, at the mailboxes, whether anybody had a baby, whether anybody used an old audio monitor. The Hendersons on the corner had grandkids that visited but no monitor. The couple in the 5th house were our age and childless and looked at me a little strangely. Nobody on the cul-de-sac had a baby but me. I checked the county thing, the property records, told myself I was just curious about the house's history, and I found what you find, a list of names and dates, owners going back to when the development was raw dirt, and among them, 3 separate times, a sale within a year of a birth. That is all I will say about that. I looked at it a long time and then I closed the laptop and I did not look again, because there are things you can find out that do not help you, that only sit in your chest like a swallowed stone, and I had a baby to raise and no room in me for a stone. I tried to record it, of course. That was the obvious thing, the thing anyone would tell you to do, the thing I told myself would settle it one way or the other. If I had it on tape, I could play it in the daylight, and either it would be nothing, some ordinary interference I could laugh at, or it would be something, and then at least I would not be alone with it. So one rainy night, when the humming started, I set my phone down next to the handset on the dresser, and I opened the little recorder app, and I pressed the red circle, and I let it run. 11 minutes. I stood there the whole time listening to the woman hum and the other baby settle, and the red numbers climbed on the phone, and I thought, there. I played it back at the kitchen table the next morning with the sun coming in. 11 minutes of rain. Just rain and the hum of the refrigerator, and once, faintly, the house settling. No woman, no lullaby, no other child. I turned the volume all the way up and pressed my ear to the little speaker until my own pulse was louder than anything on the recording, and there was nothing there, because it was never in the air, you understand? It was never sound the way rain is sound, the way a phone can catch it. It came in on the one channel that only I was tuned to. It was meant for me, and it was carried by me, and a machine could no more record it than a machine could record how much I loved my daughter. That was the morning I stopped pretending there was a version of this that ended with a rational explanation, and me feeling foolish. There was no such version. There had never been. Marcus never heard it. I need to say that plainly, because for a while I let myself hope he would, let myself imagine waking him and dragging him into the hall and watching his face change as he finally heard what I heard, the two of us in it, together at last. But it does not work like that, and I think you already know why. One rainy night I did wake him. I could not help it. The humming was so close and I was so frightened by how much I wanted to go to it that I shook him awake and put the handset in his hand and said, "Listen. Please, just listen." And he sat up, bless him, rubbing his face, and he held it to his ear, and he listened, honestly listened, for a long minute. And then he looked at me with such tenderness and such worry that I knew before he spoke. "Honey," he said, "it's just Nora. It's just the rain." And he was right, for him. That is all it was, for him. He handed it back, and he pulled me down against his chest, and he said I needed to see somebody, that I was worn to nothing, that no one could run on the sleep I was running on. And he was right about that too. And I let him hold me, and I did not argue, because how do you argue? The room was not for him. He had never carried a child under his own heart and lain awake for it. He was not tuned to the frequency it sang on. It was not humming for him. It was never once humming for him. My sister came out for a weekend in the middle of all this, and I hoped, God forgive me, that she would hear it, because she has 3 of her own and she knows what I know. She is a receiver the way I am a receiver. It rained both nights she was there. I made up the office for her, right across the hall, and I lay awake in my own bed with the handset, and I waited, and the humming came, soft and low off behind the wall that does not go anywhere. And I got up and I went, and I stood in her doorway and I said, Kate, Kate, are you awake? Do you hear that? And she surfaced out of sleep and she listened, propped on one elbow, her face patient in the dark. Hear what? She said. The rain, she said. Go to bed, she said, not unkindly. The way you talk to someone you love who is standing in your doorway at 2 a.m, and I stood there, and I heard both at once. The humming clear is my own name and my sister telling me there was nothing but rain, and I understood that it did not matter how many mothers I put in this house. It had chosen me. It was not going to be overheard, not going to be shared, not going to be witnessed. It was mine. The way a haunting is only ever one person's, and there is a particular loneliness in that which I did not have a word for until it was already all around me. The chair was the thing that undid the last of my composure. For weeks I had been hearing it, under the humming, the small rhythmic creak of a rocking chair taking a woman's weight and giving it back, taking it and giving it back, the sound every nursery and every gentle story has in it. I had heard it so many nights that I had stopped noticing it, the way you stop noticing your own heartbeat. And then one gray afternoon, folding laundry in Nora's room, I looked around at the actual room, the real one, and I understood that we did not own a rocking chair. We never had. We had meant to. I had wanted one of those gliders, and we had never had the money, and I had fed Nora and rocked Nora standing up, swaying on my own 2 feet in the dark for 5 months, because there was no chair in this house and never had been. There was no chair anywhere in my house for that sound to come from. I sat down on the floor of the real nursery with a half-folded sleeper in my hands, and I did not cry, exactly. It was past crying. I just sat with the fact of it. There was a chair in the other room. Somebody had bought the chair I could not afford, and set it in a nursery I could not reach, and was sitting in it now, rocking, taking the weight and giving it back, humming down a child in the one room in my house that my hands would never touch. There was a night the other baby would not go down. I had never heard that before. The child in the far room always settled, always gave in, always slept in the end. But this one night it fought and fought, winding up and up toward a real cry, and the woman hummed harder to catch it and could not, and the crying broke over into that thin, endless, inconsolable wail that every mother's body answers before her mind can catch up. And mine did. I was on my feet before I knew it, halfway to the hall, my arms already curving into the shape they make around a crying child, because that is what 5 months had built into me, an answer with no off switch. And it did not matter at all that the crying was not Nora's. It was a baby crying in the dark and needing to be picked up, and my whole body had lunged to go and pick it up, and I got as far as the top of the stairs before I understood where my feet were carrying me. That was how it worked on me best, I think. Not by frightening me, by needing me. It had found the one thing I could not walk past, a child in the dark that no one was coming for, and it played that child's crying like a hand closing around my wrist. I made myself go back into Nora's room. I made myself sit on the floor with my back against her crib, and I listened to the other one cry itself out with no one I could send, and it was one of the hardest things I have ever done, to sit still while a baby cried. Even that baby. Even a baby that was never born in any year I could find. The pull got stronger as the fall went on. I have to be honest about that, even the parts that do not make me look sane, on the rainy nights. And it rained so much that fall, off the fields, soft and endless. The humming would start and the wanting would start with it. And it was not a small wanting. It was the deep, animal, bottomless wanting of a woman who has not slept a whole night in 5 months to lie down. To be the one put to sleep for once, to follow the tender voice into the warm room and sit in the creaking chair and let somebody else hum. Let somebody else keep the watch. Let somebody else be the receiver for once, so that I could finally close my eyes all the way and not surface every 20 minutes at the smallest sound. That is what it offered. It never showed a face. It never made a threat. It offered rest to a woman starving for rest, and it offered it in the most loving voice I have ever heard. And if you think you would have been stronger than me, I hope to God you never have to find out. One night I got up. It was the worst night, the rainiest, near the end of October, and I had been awake for what felt like a week, and the humming was so close and so warm, and I got up off the floor of Nora's room where I had been keeping my useless watch, and I walked out into the hall with the handset in my hand, and I followed it. And here is the thing about the room that is not in any direction. When you stop refusing it, it starts to have a direction. It had never gotten louder in any room before because I had never been willing to go. But that night, walking, I found that if I turned toward the stairs, the humming swelled. Just slightly, just enough. And if I turned away, it thinned. And my body knew, the way your body knows where a smell is coming from. And my body turned me toward the stairs and started me down them, down toward the dark first floor, toward the hall closet where the box had been. The closet was... I was 3 steps from the bottom when Nora screamed. Not fussed. Screamed. The real cry, the one I could pick out of 100, the one that comes up from the bottom of them, the one that means alone and afraid and where are you? It came out of the handset in my hand at full volume, my real daughter, in her real room, awake and terrified in the dark, and it went through me like cold water, and it broke whatever the humming had wrapped around me. I turned and I went up those stairs faster than I have ever moved in my life, and I do not remember the humming stopping. I do not remember anything except that I was in her room, and she was in my arms, and she was real hot and heavy and furious and real, and I was crying into her hair and saying, "I'm here, I'm here, I'm here," over and over. Not the good silence, the listening silence. And that is when I understood the whole shape of it, standing in my daughter's room at 3 a.m. with the rain on the roof. I had it backward. I had thought Nora's cry saved me, that she woke and called me back by luck, by the ordinary luck of a baby waking, but a baby who has slept through 100 rainy nights does not, of her own accord, come up screaming at the exact moment her mother reaches the bottom stair. She screamed because I was leaving. Some small, true animal part of her felt her mother going down into the dark toward a room that wanted her, and she did the only thing a 5-month-old can do to hold on to her mother. She screamed, and it worked, and the thing in the house let go, because there are 2 of us here now, and it had been reaching for the wrong one. It had been humming for me. It thought it could have me, the tired one, the one who wanted to be put to sleep. It did not count on the other one. It did not count on being outpulled. Nora wanted me more than it did, and Nora won, and it went quiet. And I think it is only figuring out now that there is a stronger call in this house than the one it makes. We are still here. I want you to know that, because I think you expect me to say we moved, that we fled in the night, that some houses you just leave. But you cannot outrun a monitor by moving, can you? It was never the house. I understood that when I stood on the stairs and felt the room turn to have a direction for me. It is not in the walls. It is in the reaching. It found the frequency a mother's love runs on, and it learned to sing on it. And there is not a house on this earth where I would not be listening for my daughter in the dark, and so there is not a house on this earth where it could not sing to me. So instead, I changed the terms. Here is what I do now, and I am telling you because I think there may be more of us than I knew. Tired women in ordinary houses hearing a room that is not there, and I want one of you to hear this and know what to do. I keep the monitor. I have to. I have to be able to hear her. But I keep a light on now, all night, in the hall, and I keep Nora's door open and mine open across from it so that there is a straight line between us with nothing folded into it. On the rainy nights, when the humming starts, I do not fight the pull with willpower, because willpower is not enough. I learned that on the stairs. I get up and I go the other way. I go to Nora. I put my hand on her back and I feel her breathing, and I hum myself out loud over the top of the other humming, the real over the unreal, the near over the far, until the far one stops, because it cannot stand to be answered by something louder and closer and more alive than it is. I am the receiver in this house. I decide what it carries. That is the one thing I did not understand about mothers, that we are not only the ones who are called, we are the ones who call. Some nights it still comes so close. Some nights the voice is so tender and I am so tired that I feel the old floating come over me, the come home, the lie, down now. It's late and I have to grip the rail of Nora's crib until my knuckles ache and remind my own body which baby is mine. It has not stopped trying. I do not think it can stop trying any more than I can stop listening. We are two frequencies that will run in this house as long as I live here. The one that reaches out of the dark and the one that reaches back. And every rainy night is a small war fought in humming over a crib in the dark. And every morning that Nora wakes warm and hungry and furious, and mine is a night I won. I do not follow the sound. That is the whole of it. That is the only rule that matters, the one I would carve into the wall if I could, for the next tired mother who buys this house or finds this monitor in a closet and does not throw it away. Whatever it sounds like, however much you want to lie down, however sweetly it says your name, and it will say your name, it knows your name, it knew mine. You do not follow the sound. You turn around. You go to the child that is really there. You put your hand on the small reel back, and you feel it rise and fall, and you let that be the only nursery in the world. There is a second nursery in my house. I hear it on the rainy nights, folded into a wall at an angle the house does not have. A woman humming a baby that is not mine, down into a sleep I will never see. I know it is there. I will always know it is there, and I am never, ever going to it, because everything I have is in the first one, breathing in the dark, one room away, on the near side of the wall, where I can reach her. Rest now. If you are listening from a house like mine, lie back down beside your own and hum a little louder than it does, and let the rain take the rest. I am going to go and check on her now. I do it 12 times a night. I will do it 12 times a night for the rest of my life. The rain is coming down soft off the fields, the way it did that first good night, and the house is quiet, and somewhere just behind a wall, a woman is humming, low and slow and tender, calling and calling. Let her call. My daughter is breathing in the next room. That is the only sound I am going to follow into the dark. Story 5, The Man Under the Streetlight. I want to say up front that I am not a nervous person. I know everybody says that, the way everybody in a ghost story swears they never believed in ghosts, and I know how it sounds. But I have spent my whole adult life being the practical one. I am the woman who reads the fine print, who keeps jumper cables in the trunk and a list of the septic guy's number on the fridge, who has never once in her life run up the basement stairs because she scared herself. When a smoke detector chirps at 2 in the morning, I get the stepladder and I change the battery. I do not lie awake deciding the house is haunted. So when I tell you that for the better part of a year I explained a man away night after night, and did such a thorough job of it that I almost talked myself blind, I want you to understand it was not stupidity. It was practice. I was good at it. I had a lot of practice. The house is a rental on Meriwether Street, which is a nice enough word for what is really just a short block of post-war bungalows out past the old mill. The kind of street where every third house has the same bones, and somebody along the way painted theirs a color they regretted. I took it because it was cheap, and because the divorce had made me want a place that was nobody's idea of a fresh start. Just 4 walls and a furnace that worked. I moved in during a wet March, and I will tell you the first thing I loved about that house was the rain. It came off the low hills and settled in over the valley for days at a stretch, soft and steady, drumming on the porch roof and running down the gutters. And I would lie in bed with the window cracked an inch and let it put me under like a hand on my back. I have never slept better than I slept that spring. That is the part nobody warns you about. You can be perfectly happy and perfectly comfortable and be looking straight at the wrong thing and not know it yet. The streetlight is directly across from my front window. There is one to a block on Meriwether, an old sodium vapor thing on a leaning pole, and mine throws down a cone of that orange light that makes everybody's skin look like a bad photograph. Under it, across the street and a little to the left, there's a low brick wall at the edge of the Petersons' yard, maybe knee-high, the kind you sit on to tie your shoe. And that is where I first saw him, the second week of April, standing at the wall in the rain, not sitting, standing with his hands at his sides, facing my house. I did not think anything of it. That is the honest truth, and it is also the whole problem. A man standing under a streetlight at night is not a story. He is a guy waiting for a ride. He is a neighbor who came out for air. He is somebody's brother-in-law having a cigarette because his wife won't let him smoke inside. I looked at him for about as long as it takes to read a road sign, decided he was any of those things, and went to bed. It was raining. Who stands in the rain, I remember thinking, and then answering myself. Plenty of people. People stand in the rain all the time, and that was that. He was there the next night too. Same spot, same posture, hands down, face turned toward the front of my house. I noticed because I had gone to the window to check whether I'd left my car window down, and there he was. And something in me did a small, quiet thing, a little hitch, like missing a stair in the dark. But I am telling you, I am practical. I stood there, and I'd built him a life. He worked nights, I decided, and this was his stop. He waited here for a carpool or a bus that didn't run on any schedule I knew, and it just happened to be raining both nights because it was April, and it rained every night. I even felt a little sorry for him, out there in the wet. I thought about how cold it must be. That is the kind of thing I did with him, right up until the end. I kept finding him a reason and then feeling tender about the reason. Here is what I want you to picture, because the geography matters. My front window looks out over a small yard and a low hedge, then the sidewalk, then the street, then the far sidewalk, then the wall and the light. Call it 60 feet, door to man. Not far, close enough that if he'd shouted, I would have heard him clearly. Close enough that on a dry night with the porch light on, I could have told you the color of his coat, which was dark, and that he was a big man, tall and heavy through the shoulders, and that he wore something on his head, a cap or a hood. I could never quite settle it, but not close enough to see a face. That was the thing. In 11 months, I never once saw his face. The streetlight was behind him and above him, so his front was always in his own shadow. A dark shape cut out of an orange glow. And where the face should have been, there was just a smudge of darker dark. And I told myself that was the light. That was only the light. He never came any closer. I need you to hold on to that, because it is the part that people who hear this story always get wrong. They lean in and they ask, so what did he do? And they want me to say he came to the door. He tried the windows. He left something on the porch. He never did any of that. Not once. He never crossed the street. He never took a step toward the house. In all those months, the distance between us never changed by a single foot. He stood at the wall, across the street, in the rain and out of it, and he faced my house, and he waited. That was all he ever did. He waited. And I want to tell you that the fact that he never did anything is exactly what got into me, slow, the way water gets into a wall. Because a man who does something, you can call the police. A man who does nothing, you can only watch, and wonder what he is waiting for, and be the one who is doing all the moving and the arrangement, all the checking and the peering and the lying awake, while he holds still as a fence post and lets you tire yourself out. I started keeping track without meaning to. That is how it works, I think. You don't decide to become the kind of person who loves a stranger. You just look one night and think, was he here yesterday? And you can't remember? And it bothers you not to know? So the next night you make a point of remembering, and then you're doing it? You're a person who checks. By May, I could have told you. He came out sometime after the light was full dark, usually around when I was turning in, and that he was gone by morning, always gone by morning. I never once caught him leaving. I tried. I set an alarm for 3 and got up and went to the window, and there he was. And I stood there in the cold with my arms crossed, telling myself I would outlast him. And I fell asleep in the chair and woke at 6, and he was gone. It felt like losing at something. I remember being genuinely annoyed, the way you're annoyed at a raccoon that keeps beating your trash can lid. I hadn't gotten to afraid yet. I was still at annoyed. Afraid took longer, and it came in through a different door than I expected. It came in through the neighbors. I want to be fair to them because they were kind to me. They really were. In the ordinary casserole way of a street like that, it was Dell next door. I asked first, an older man, a widower, retired from the county, the sort who knows which trees on the block are going to have to come down before their owners do. We were both out at our cans on a Tuesday, and I said it as light as I could. I nodded across the street and I said, "Hey, you know that fella who stands over by the Petersons' wall at night?" I said it like a joke, like, isn't it funny, this town? And Dell looked over, in daylight, at the empty wall, at the streetlight standing there gray and switched off in the morning, and he knew exactly what I meant. That is the thing. He didn't say, "What fella?" He didn't squint and say, "I'm not sure I follow." He looked at the empty spot where the man stands at night, and he nodded, slow, like I'd mentioned the weather, and he said, "Oh, yeah. He's usually there. Been a while since he was on this end of the street." And then he picked up his can and said, "You have a good one," and went inside. And I stood in my driveway holding my recycling and feeling the morning go strange around me. Been a while since he was on this end of the street. I turned that one over for days. Because you understand what it means. It means Dell had seen him. Not once, not as a curiosity, but enough to have a sense of his habits, enough to know he moved, that he was on this end of the street now, and had been on some other end before. It means the man under the light was not new and not mine, that he had been standing on Merriweather for long enough to become a fact of the place. Like the pothole by the stop sign that everybody knows to swerve around and nobody calls the county about. And it means Dell was not troubled. That was the part I kept snagging on. Dell, who would talk your ear off about a diseased elm, who watched the street like it was his job, was not troubled by a man who stood in the rain every night facing people's houses. He'd filed him. He'd made his peace. Oh yeah, he's usually there. I did what a practical person does. I decided Dell was old and that the man was some harmless local fixture, a fellow with a condition maybe, a wanderer. The whole street had learned to leave alone, the way you learn to leave alone. It's a small town. Small towns keep their strange ones close and unbothered. That's supposed to be the good thing about them. I told myself I was being a city person about it, clutching my keys over a man everybody else had long since folded into the ordinary. I told myself I would learn to do the same. I even tried. For about a week, I made a point of not looking. I'd feel the pull to go to the window, and I'd stay in the kitchen instead, and I'd think, good. You're getting over it. You're becoming a Merriweather person. And I'd go to bed and lie there listening to the rain and feeling him out there anyway. Feeling the fact of him through the wall like you feel someone standing behind you before you turn around. The rain, I should say, never stopped being lovely. I know how strange that is. You'd think the thing would have poisoned it, but that was a wet year, one of the wettest anybody could remember, and the rain came almost every night that summer, warm and heavy and kind, and it was still the thing I loved best about the house. I'd have the window cracked and the box fan off, and just the sound of it, and it was like being a child again in the back seat on a long drive. That safe, drowsy feeling of being carried somewhere while the world washes past the glass. I slept in that sound, and the man stood in that same sound 60 feet away. And the two things existed in me at once and never quite touched. The comfort and the watching. The way you can be warm under a blanket and know the window is open to the cold. Maybe that's why it took so long to frighten me. The setting was so gentle. He didn't belong to a dark and stormy night. He belonged to a soft one. He stood in the nicest weather I know, and that made him harder to be afraid of, and later, much worse. I asked more people once I'd started. That was a mistake. Or it wasn't. I still can't decide. I asked Marge Peterson, whose wall it is, a brisk woman my mother's age who runs the plant sale at the church, and she was watering her ferns, and I said, "Does it bother you, him standing at your wall every night?" And she gave me a look I have thought about 100 times since. It was not a frightened look, and it was not a confused look. It was a patient look, the look you give a new employee who's asked why we do it this way. She said, "He doesn't hurt the ferns." She said it kindly. She said, "He's never once been any trouble, honey. He just likes the light." And then she said the thing that I have not been able to put down. She said, "You leave your porch light on for him, don't you?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Most folks leave a little light on. It's only polite." He gets cold. It gets cold. The same thing I had thought that first tender night. Except she said it like it was a chore on a list, like leaving out a dish of water in a dry August. Most folks leave a little light on. It's only polite. I did not leave my porch light on. I want that on the record. Whatever else I did wrong, I did not do that. But I went inside and I stood in my dark front room and I looked at him standing across the street, and for the first time, I was not building him a life. For the first time, I was just looking at him and feeling how outnumbered I was. Not by him, by everybody. By the whole street. Because it had stopped being a story about a strange man and become a story about a strange arrangement and understanding, a set of manners that everyone on Merriweather had learned and kept, and that I had walked into the middle of without being taught. They left the light on for him. They thought of him getting cold. They knew when he moved from one end of the street to the other, and they marked it, the way you'd mark the swallows coming back. Oh, he's on this end now. And none of them, not one, thought there was anything to do about it except be polite and wait for him to move along. Move along to where? Move along to whom? That was the question that finally got its hooks in me, standing in that dark room. He'd been on the other end before, Dell said, so he'd faced somebody else's house, before mine. For how long? And what had happened to make him move down to face mine? And what would have to happen to make him move on again? I found I did not want to know the answer, and I found I could not stop reaching for it. And that is the exact temperature at which a practical person starts, very quietly, to come apart. I did the sensible things. I want you to know I did them, because later people always ask, why didn't you just? And the answer is, I just did, and it didn't matter. I called the non-emergency line. A tired woman took my report and said an officer would do a pass, and one did. I watched the cruiser come slow down Merriweather with its spotlight sweeping the yards, and here is the thing, the man was there. He was standing at the wall in the rain when the headlights came around the corner and the cruiser slowed, and I stood at my window with my heart going, this is it. Now somebody official. The officer never stopped. He did a slow pass of the whole block and went on to the next street. In the morning, I called back and asked what they'd found, and the tired woman said the officer reported the area quiet. No subjects observed. No subjects observed. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time after that. I told myself the light, the angle, the rain on the windshield. I told myself the officer looked at the wrong wall, that the spotlight had washed him out. that a man in a dark coat against a dark hedge is easy to miss from a moving car. I told myself all of it, and I mostly believed it, because the alternative was a sentence I was not ready to say out loud, which was that the officer had looked right at the spot where I could plainly see a large man standing in the rain and had seen nobody at all. I was not ready for that sentence. I put it in a drawer. I am a practical woman, and practical women have a lot of drawers. I bought a camera, one of those little doorbell ones, and a second one for the front window, and I set them to record all night, and I felt very clever and very modern and very much back in control, because now I would have proof. Now it would not be my word and my nerves against a whole street of people who left the porch light on for a man who gets cold. I remember I slept well the night I set them up. I remember thinking, tomorrow I'll have him. I'll have his face in his coat and the time he comes and the time he goes, and I'll take it to somebody who has to do something about it. In the morning, the footage showed the street, the rain, the streetlight coming on and going off with the dark, the Peterson's wall, the ferns nodding under the drip line. 12 hours of it, and no man. I scrubbed through it 3 times. I slowed it down. There was the light, there was the rain, there was a cat that crossed at 2:40 and a garbage truck at 6, and there was never, at any point, a man at the wall. And I had watched him. I want to be clear about that. The night those cameras ran, I had gotten up at midnight and gone to the window, and he had been there, hands down, facing me, plain as the mailbox, and I had thought, smile, you're on camera, and gone back to bed, almost pleased. And the camera, pointed at the same wall, running the whole time, filmed an empty wall. That was the night the drawers stopped working. That was the night I ran out of places to put it. Because you can explain one thing. You can explain the officer, the light, the angle, the tired eyes. You can explain Dell as an old man's easy manner, and Marge as small-town color, and the rain as rain. You can explain any single piece of it, and I had explained every single piece of it, one at a time, for months, and been proud of my work. But you cannot explain the whole shape once it's assembled, and that night it assembled. A man who stands facing my house every night, who never comes closer and never goes away, whom the entire street sees and knows and accommodates and is not afraid of, whom the police cannot see, whom the camera cannot see, whom only I, apparently, and my neighbors, who have all agreed not to mind, can see it all. There is no drawer big enough for that. It just sits out on the table looking at you. I did not sleep after that. Not really, not the deep rain-carried sleep from before. I'd get an hour and surface, and the first thing I'd do, every time, before I was even properly awake, was turn my head to the window and check the wall. And he'd be there. He was always there. And now that I was really looking, now that I'd stopped spending all my strength on excuses, I started to notice things about the way he stood that I had been careful before not to notice. That he did not shift his weight, that he did not look at his phone or light a cigarette or do any of the small idle things a waiting body does. That the rain, which fell on everything, did not seem to make him hunch or wipe his face or turn up a collar. That he was, in a way I had been calling stillness, because stillness was a word I could live with, not still like a patient man, but still like a thing that is not alive in the way you are. A stillness with no fidget under it, no held breath waiting to let go. He faced the house. He got, I suppose, cold. And he waited, and the waiting had no bottom to it, no sense that it was building toward anything, and that was the worst part. Worse than if he'd rattled the door, because a door you can lock. You cannot lock a wait. I went to Dell one more time. I was not light about it now. I stood in his kitchen where he'd waved me in for coffee, and I said, "Dell, I need you to be straight with me. Who is he?" And Dell, God bless him, did not pretend not to understand. He wrapped both hands around his mug and he looked out his own kitchen window toward the street. And he was quiet for a while, and then he said the thing I have carried around ever since, and I'll give it to you the way he gave it to me. Plain and not unkind. He said, "I don't rightly know who he is. Nobody does, that I ever heard. He's been on Merriweather longer than I have, and I've been here 40 years, he said. When I first moved in, he was down at the Kowalski end, and old Kowalski used to leave his porch light on, same as everybody. And one winter Kowalski passed, in his sleep, nothing bad. He was 90. And after that, the fellow wasn't at the Kowalski end anymore. He was 2 houses down. And I asked Dell, who lived 2 houses down, and Dell looked at me and didn't answer, and drank his coffee, and I understood that I was not going to get the list of names. That the list of names was the thing the whole street had agreed, gently, over 40 years, not to say out loud. Then Dell said the only piece of advice anybody on that street ever gave me about it. He said, "Don't make it a thing." He waits. That's all he does, is wait, and there's no hurrying him and no chasing him off, so the folks that do all right are the folks that just let him wait and go on about their lives. It's the ones that fight it that have a hard time. He said, "Leave your light on, hun." Not for him. For you. It's easier when you stop pretending he isn't out there. And he refilled my cup, and we talked about his tomatoes, and I went home, and that night, for the first time, I left my porch light on. I am not proud of that. But I want to be honest about all of it, including the part where I gave in, because I think it's the truest part. I left the light on, and something in me eased, the way it eases when you finally stop arguing with a fact. He stood in my little porch light that night, closer to lit than he'd ever been, and I could see the wet shine on the shoulders of his coat, and I still could not see his face. And I looked at him and he faced me, and neither of us did anything, and I went to bed and slept better than I had in weeks. That is the thing I most want you to understand, and the thing I least want to admit. It was easier once I stopped fighting. Dell was right. You get used to him. You leave the light on. You go on about your life. The whole street had figured that out long before me, and now I'd figured it out too. And I became, for a while, another person who knew he was there and left a little light on and did not make it a thing. Weeks went by like that. Most of the summer, really. I'd like to tell you, I spent them plotting some clever escape. But the truth is, I spent them living, badly and then less badly, getting used to it, exactly the way you get used to a train that goes by at 11, that wakes you the first month and then becomes the sound of your own house. He was the man under my streetlight. He got cold. I left the light on. I stopped scrubbing camera footage. I stopped calling the non-emergency line. I want to tell you I was at peace, but it wasn't peace. It was just the arrangement, the same one the whole street kept, and I kept it, and the days got shorter, and the rain kept up its warm nightly work on the porch roof, and somewhere in there, without my quite noticing it, I had become a woman who checked the wall, the way you'd check that the stove's off, once, out of habit, and was comforted, not frightened, to find him. There was one night in there I have to tell you about, because it is the only time I ever tried to close the distance myself, and I think it matters that I did, and that nothing came of it. It was August, a warm, still night with the rain just starting, and I had been drinking a little wine on the porch, which I did not usually do, and I got it into my head that I was tired of being the one who watched from behind glass. I thought, I am a grown woman, and that is a public street, and I am going to walk out there and get a look at his face and say good evening and see what he does. I was not brave. I want to be clear. It was not bravery. It was wine, and a summer's worth of being worn down to the point where I would rather have something happen than keep having nothing happen. So I went down my steps and across my wet yard, and he faced me the whole way, of course. He always faced my house. And now I was walking out of the house, so he faced me, and I got to the sidewalk, and I got to the edge of the street, and I stood at the curb with the rain coming down soft and warm, and I looked across 60 feet of wet asphalt at the man under the light, and I could not make myself step off the curb. I want to tell you why. And I can't, exactly. It was not that he moved. He didn't. It was not that he made a sound. He never made a sound in all those months. It was that, the closer I got, the more the air seemed to thicken, the way it does at the top of a high place when your body knows something your mind is still arguing with. And standing at that curb, I felt, was my whole animal self, that the street between us was a distance that was his to keep, not mine to cross, that he stood exactly as far away as he meant to stand, and I stood there in the rain until I was soaked through, and he faced me, and neither of us crossed, and finally I turned around and went back up my own yard, feeling his attention on my back the whole way, and I locked the door, and I did not try that again. I had a friend visit that fall before the end, a woman named Cheryl. I've known since we were girls, and I decided, the way you decide to test a tooth with your tongue even though you know it'll hurt, that I would find out whether she could see him. I didn't tell her anything. I didn't want to lead her. We were doing dishes after supper, her washing and me drying, and it had come on to rain, and I said, casual as I could, "Hey, is there somebody standing out by that wall across the street?" And she leaned to the window over the sink and looked, really looked, the way you look when someone asks you a plain question, and he was there. He was there as plain to me as Cheryl was, big and dark and facing the house with the porch light shining wet on his shoulders, and she looked right at him and dried her hands and said, "Where? I don't see anybody," and turned the porch light off for me as a courtesy, because she thought I... And in the dark she looked again and said, "No, honey, there's nobody out there. You've got the rain, Jumpy." And I stood there with a dish towel in my hands, and my oldest friend 2 feet away telling me the wall was empty while I watched him stand at it. And I laughed, because what else? And I said, "I guess it's the rain." And I never brought it up again the whole visit. That was the last time I asked anybody outside of Merriweather. There was no point. It was the street's man, and only the street could see him. And I was the street now, whether I'd meant to be or not. I have thought a great deal about why the comfort. And I think it is this, and it is not a nice thing to know about yourself. I think that once you accept that a thing is waiting for you and cannot be hurried and cannot be stopped, there is a kind of terrible rest in it. You stop bracing. Every night he was there was a night nothing had changed. A night the wait went on, and the wait going on meant it hadn't ended. And I did not, it turned out, want to know what the end looked like. So his being there became good news. As long as he's at the wall, I thought, without ever letting myself finish the thought, everything is still all right. He's still just waiting. He hasn't come. The light's on, and he's cold, and he's waiting, and that means I have tonight. I never said any of that to myself in words, but that was the shape of the comfort, and I lived inside it all summer, and I want to tell you it worked, right up until the night it didn't, which is where this really ends, and where I have nothing to give you but the plain fact of it, because I never found out anything more. It was October by then, and it was raining. Of course it was raining. A fine cold rain that had been coming down since afternoon, the kind that settles in for the night. I did my rounds. I checked the stove, I checked the back door, and I went to the front window to check the wall, the way I did. The way it had become as ordinary as anything, expecting the small dark shape and the wet shine of him and the little settling of my own nerves that came with finding him there. The porch light was on. It had been on for months. It threw its yellow out across the wet grass to the sidewalk, and the street light threw its orange down across the street. And between the two of them, the Petersons' wall was lit up plain as day, the brick dark with rain, the ferns beaten down and dripping, every knuckle of it clear. And there was no one there. I stood at the window a long time. I want to describe it right, because it was not relief. It was the very opposite of relief. It came up through me cold and wrong and total. The wall was empty, the light was on, and the wall was empty, and the rain came down through the cone of the streetlight and fell on nobody. I waited for him. That is the part that tells you how far I'd gone. I stood at my own window in the dark, and I waited for the man to be standing there facing my house, the way you'd wait for a sound you've heard every night of your life to come, and it doesn't, and the silence is louder than the sound ever was. I told myself he was late. I told myself he'd moved a little. He was behind the hedge. He'd stepped off for the first time in 11 months to do God knows what a thing like that does. I went out onto the porch, in the rain, in my socks, and I looked up the street and down it, and the streetlight buzzed and the rain fell and Merriweather was empty end to end. every wall bare, every yard quiet, and somewhere behind me my porch light was on for a man who was not there. I did not sleep. I sat up in the front room with all the lights on and watched the wall until it got gray with morning, and he did not come. And I kept thinking about the Kowalski end, about the winter-old Kowalski passed in his sleep. Nothing bad. He was 90. And how after that the fellow wasn't at the Kowalski end anymore, he was 2 houses down. I kept thinking about how the whole street knew when he moved, and marked it, and how nobody ever said out loud what it meant when the man under your streetlight, who had faced your house every night for the better part of a year, was suddenly and finally not there. Because he waits. That's what Dell said. That's what all of them said. That's the one thing everybody on Merryweather agreed on. He waits. And the thing that waits is a thing that is waiting for something, and the wait, once it's over, is over because the thing it was waiting for has come. I did not know, standing at my window in the gray morning, whether an empty wall meant he had given up on me, or moved on to some other house, some other tired new person who hadn't learned yet to leave the light on, or whether it meant the wait was done, whether he was not across the street anymore because he no longer needed to be across the street, whether the distance that had never once changed in 11 months had finally, on this one soft rainy night, closed, and he was not out there facing the house because he was no longer out there at all, and the reason the wall was empty was that the waiting had ended, and I was simply, quietly, out of nights. I have not gone back to the window since it got light. I am sitting where I can see the front door, and I am telling you this while I can still tell it plainly, because I am a practical woman, and I would rather say a true thing calmly than a frightened thing too late. The porch light is still on. I have not turned it off. The rain has slowed to almost nothing now, just a soft last patter on the roof, that sound I used to love, that used to put me under like a hand on my back. It's a gentle morning. Everything out there is washed and quiet and ordinary. The wall is empty, and I am sitting very still in my own house, the way you sit when you've stopped being the one who moves, listening past the last of the rain for a sound I have never once heard in all these months, which is the sound of the porch step, and hoping, the way you hope for the train that always comes at 11, that I only have to keep waiting, and that the wait is still the good part. Story 6. The house rests with you. The rain started some time after you turned off the last light. You did not notice the exact moment. That is how you know it is truly night now. The rain is no longer an event. It is just the sound the world is making while you lie here, and it will keep making it long after you are asleep. You are not going to get up again. You settled that a while ago, without words. The last thing you did was press the kitchen switch. The click of it was the last hard sound in the house. Listen for a moment. Not for anything inside the rain, just to the rain itself. It is steady on the roof, not the hard kind that drums and demands you notice it, the low, even kind. 1,000 small taps that have blurred into one long sound. It moves in the gutters. It finds the downspout at the corner of the house. It runs there in a thin private stream, and if you try, you can pick that one stream out. There. You hear it. Then you let it blur back into the hole. You are warm. That is the first true thing about tonight. You want to say it before anything else, because it is the thing you will keep coming back to. You are warm all the way through. It is the good, tired warmth of a body that has finally been allowed to stop. The blankets are exactly enough. Not too many. Not too few. The bed has taken your shape, and your feet are warm, which they almost never are. Think about that for a second, gently. You are a person whose feet are cold from October to May. You sleep in socks and still wake up cold. And tonight your feet are warm, and you did nothing to make them so. They are just warm. Let them be. The house is warm too. You noticed it climbing the stairs. A warmth that did not match the number on the thermostat. You keep that number low at night because heat is money, and you are careful with money. You thought, I must have left the heat up. You did not go back to check. Checking meant going down, and you were already halfway to sleep. So you let it be warm. You are letting a great many things be tonight. That is what tonight is for. Somewhere below you, the house settles. You know that sound. Every house that has stood for a while makes it. The small tick and creak of wood giving up the day's warmth, the joints easing, the whole structure relaxing an inch toward the ground it stands on. Your house has always made this sound, and made it for the people who lived here before you. It will make it for whoever comes after. It is nothing. It is only the house cooling, or the house easing, or the slow, patient arithmetic of gravity that all houses do at night. Except that tonight the house is not cooling. Tonight it is warm and getting no colder, and still it settles. And the settling is slower than it should be. Longer. A creak begins. It takes its time. Then, instead of ending, it softens. It softens the way a sound softens when something has decided it is in no hurry. You lie here and listen, and the settling has a rhythm to it. A slow rise. A slower fall, and it takes you a moment, warm here with your warm feet, to see what the rhythm is like. It is like breathing. Now, you are not going to be afraid of that. I want you to notice that you are not afraid, and I want you to keep not being afraid. There is nothing in this house tonight that means you any harm. Part of you already knows this. You have been afraid in this house before. You know what afraid feels like here. It has a taste, a thin metal taste at the back of the throat. It makes the dark go grainy and sharp. It makes you count the doors between you and the outside. You are doing none of that. The dark is soft. Your throat is easy. You have not thought about the doors once. And now that you do think of them, just for a moment, they are only doors. Behind them is the rest of your own warm house. Behind that is only the rain. So the house is breathing. Let it breathe. It is a big, slow breath, if it is a breath at all. Far too big to be yours, far too slow. It is the breath of something the size of the hole downstairs, the living room and the kitchen and the front hall, all at once. In through the long creak, out through the settle, in through the joists, out through the floorboards. And you find, without meaning to, that your own breath has begun to move with it. You pull your slow breath in as the house pulls its breath in. You let it go and the house lets go. There is a comfort in this you did not expect. The comfort of not having to keep time by yourself. You have been keeping time by yourself for a long while. Longer than you like to count. There is no one else in this house to breathe against. That is not a complaint. It is just the plain fact of your nights. You turn the light off alone. You lie down alone. You listen to your own single breath in the dark, and you match it against nothing. You had gotten used to it, the way you get used to a stone in your shoe on a long walk, which is to say you stopped noticing it, and it kept aching anyway, a little, under the not noticing. Tonight you are not breathing alone. You should be afraid. Say it if you want. Say the sensible thing, the thing your daylight self would say. There is something in the house, and I should be afraid. Say it and listen to how it does not stick. The words go out into the warm dark. They find nothing to hold on to. They come back to you soft and meaningless, like a phone number for a house you left years ago. There is something in the house. Yes. And you are warm. And your feet, and the rain is on the roof. And you are so tired. And you cannot, for the life of you, find the fear it is supposed to make. Here is a thing about the warmth. Now that you are noticing it, notice this too. It is not coming from anywhere. You have lived with radiators. You have lived with forced air. You know how heat comes into a room. From a vent that hums. From a register that ticks as it warms. From a fire you can smell. This warmth has none of that. It is not stronger by the wall. It is not weaker by the window. It is not a draft of warm laid over a floor of cold. It is the whole room being warm evenly all at once, as though the warmth is not being sent into the room, but is simply something the room has tonight. It is the warmth the bed keeps for a few minutes after you climb out of it, held here somehow, over the whole downstairs, rising gently up the stairs to you. And it is holding. Something is keeping the house warm. Let yourself think it plainly. Thinking it plainly does not frighten you either. Something is keeping the house warm, the way you might keep a hand warm around a cup, the way you might keep a small thing warm by holding it in your palm. The house is the small thing. You are inside the small thing, and whatever is holding it is being careful. Careful, the way you are careful with something you do not want to wake. The rain changes a little. It does not stop. It does not get harder. It deepens. The way a voice deepens when it goes from talking to humming. The low, even sound of it comes down through the roof, through the ceiling, and lies over you like one more blanket. A blanket made of sound. There is nothing inside the sound. I want to be honest with you about that. You might reach for something in it, lying here. The mind does that at the edge of sleep. It reaches for a pattern, for a word inside the noise, for a tune. There is no tune. It is not singing to you. It is not anyone's voice slowed down into rain. It is not a song you knew once, coming back changed. It is only rain. Only the plain, enormous, unmusical rain. And the reason it comforts you is not that it is pretending to be something you loved. It comforts you because it is only itself. A sound with no meaning in it at all. A sound that asks you for nothing, that remembers nothing. That is the mercy of it. There is no name in this. Whatever is in the house with you tonight, it is not someone. It did not used to be a person. It is not waiting for you to recognize it. It does not have a face you would know if you turned on the light. And it does not have a face you would fail to know either, which would be worse. It has no face at all. It is not the shape of anyone who left. It is not here because it misses you, or because you miss it. There is no thread of old love strung between the two of you that it has followed home in the rain. You do not have to grieve it. You do not owe it anything. It is not a debt. It is not a ghost. It is not a memory wearing the weather. It is just an it. Warm and slow and enormous in here. Resting alongside you the way a large animal rests alongside another in the cold, for no reason but that the resting is better shared. The floor at the foot of the stairs creaks. One long, slow creak. The settle. The breath going out. You know that stair. It is the third one up from the bottom. The one that has always spoken. The one you learned to skip when you came up late and did not want to wake yourself the rest of the way. It speaks now. On an ordinary night, a creak on the stair at this hour would put a cold wire straight up your spine. You would go rigid. You would listen with your whole skin. You would count. You would wait for the second creak, the fourth stair, the landing, the approach. You would become nothing but an ear. You are listening now, but you are not waiting for it to come, because it is not coming. That is the strange, gentle center of this whole night. Whatever made the stairs speak is not climbing toward you. It made the sound the way the house makes the sound, as part of the settling, as part of the breath, and then it stayed where it was. It is not on its way up. It has no interest in reaching you. It is content, if a thing like this can be content, to be downstairs in the warm dark while you are upstairs in the warm dark. The two of you in the same house, under the same rain, resting, not together exactly, but not apart. It does not want to be seen. You feel this the way you feel the warmth without being told. If you got up now and went to the top of the stairs and looked down, it would not be there for you to see. Not because it would hide, because being seen is simply not part of what it is here to do. It is here to rest. It is here to keep the house warm around you while you sleep, the way you might half asleep yourself, keep your arm around a warmth in the bed. Not out of love, exactly. Not out of anything you could name. Just because the warmth is there, and your arm has found it, and there is no reason to move. You are the warmth. It has found you. There is no reason to move. So do not get up to look. Not because something bad would happen if you did. Nothing in this house means you harm tonight. I have told you, and I keep telling you. Do not get up to look because there is nothing to see, and because getting up would be a shame. It would be a waste of this. The one night your feet are warm, the one night you are not keeping time alone, stay where you are. Let the stairs speak and go quiet. Let the breath go out and come in. The rain on the roof over everything. Think of the rooms downstairs, since you are not going to them. Think of them the way you would think of a photograph, warmly, from a distance, without needing to be there. The kitchen where the last light was, dark now, the counter wiped down. The one cup you used tonight is turned upside down on the towel by the sink. The kitchen is warm. The table with the 2 chairs, one of which you never sit in, is warm. The floor you meant to mop and did not is warm under the dark. There is no reason for the kitchen to be warm. The oven has been cold for hours. The window over the sink lets the night in cold along its old frame. And still the room holds its heat. It holds it the way a stone holds the sun. Long after the sun is down, you know the reason it holds the heat. You are not going to think about it hard enough to spoil it. Think of the front hall, the coats on their hooks, the shoes lined up along the wall. The mat by the door, still damp from when you came in out of the rain and stood a moment, listening to it fall behind you before you shut it out. The front hall is warm. The little table where the mail goes is warm. Think of the living room, the couch, with the blanket you keep folded over its arm, the lamp you did not leave on, the window, with the rain running down the far side of the glass in long, bright threads. The threads catch what little light the night has. They carry it down. They let it go. All of it warm, all of it dark, all of it breathing. Slow, with the house, with you. Here's a thing you notice, drifting from very far up. Looking down at your own house in your mind. There's no clock in it anywhere that you can hear. You have a clock in the kitchen. So there is no small, hard second by second anywhere in the house tonight. Nothing counting. Nothing measuring the night out into pieces and spending them. The night is not being spent. It is only lying here. Whole and warm and unhurried. As much of it ahead of you now as there was an hour ago. More, somehow. The hours seem to open outward the further down you go. Once, hours from now, or minutes, you will have surface. It happens every night. It will happen tonight. That shallow rise up out of the deep, almost to the top, and not quite through it. The surface trembling above you. The room coming halfway back. You will turn over. You will feel the cool side of the pillow come warm under your cheek. The blankets will shift and resettle their good weight along your back. And you will hear, for a slow moment, exactly where you are. The rain, still going. The same rain, as though no time has passed. The house, still breathing. The long creak in the settle. The warmth, still here. Unspent. Keeping. And in that half moment, you will not be afraid to find it still here. You will be glad. The way you are glad, waking in the night in a house where someone you trust is also asleep, to hear that the house has someone in it besides you will be glad, and you will turn your face back into the warm dark and let the surface close over you again. You will go down deeper this time. The warmth will let you, and the rain will cover the sound of your going. There is thunder, very far off. So far, it is barely thunder at all. More the memory of thunder. A long, soft roll along the underside of the night, somewhere miles from here, out where the storm is thickest. It reaches you, gentled by all that distance, all that rain, all that warm dark in between. It does not startle you. It is the opposite of a startle. It is the sound of the storm being somewhere else, being far away, being kept at its distance by the same rain that is keeping you. It rolls, and it fades, and it leaves the near rain sounding closer and softer than before. The way a room sounds quieter after a car has passed outside. You are inside the quiet the far thunder makes. You are in the still center of the wide, wet turning night. The storm can wheel and mutter out there at the edges. It cannot come in. Nothing that is out in the rain wants in. And the one thing that wanted in is already here. Warm. Resting. Yours for the night. And not asking. The window in your own room has rain on it too. You could open your eyes and see it if you wanted. The long threads on the glass. The poor gray light of the overcast night behind them. The street lamp down the block, turned into a soft smear of gold by the water. Everything out there melted and running and far, but you will not open your eyes. There is nothing out the window for you tonight. Everything for you tonight is in here, in the warm. Your eyes are closed. And behind them, the dark is not empty. It has a texture again, a warm water texture. Shapes move in it that are not quite dreams yet, but are on their way to being dreams. Soft-edged, kind. Going somewhere slow. You are drifting now. You can feel the drift. The room is coming loose from its own edges. The corners of things are going soft. Your thoughts are lengthening. They are getting further apart, with more warm dark between them. Each one takes longer to arrive, and matters less when it does. This is the good part. This is the part you have been chasing on all those other nights. The nights you lay stiff and counting. The nights the fear made the dark go sharp. The nights you kept time alone against nothing and could not find the door down into sleep. It was here all along. It only needed the house to breathe you to it. Was it always here? The thought arrives slow from far off. Has it always been in the house, this warm, slow resting thing, and only tonight let you feel it? You turn the thought over, lazily, the way you would turn a smooth stone in your palm, half asleep. Maybe. Maybe it has always been here, resting in the walls, resting under the floors, keeping the house a few degrees warmer than the thermostat could account for on all the nights you never noticed. And maybe tonight, because you were tired enough, because the rain was steady enough, because you finally set down your fearful watch, you felt it for the first time. Or maybe it has never been here before tonight and will never be here again. Maybe it is once. A gift the weather made. A warmth that gathered in your house the way fog gathers in a low field, and by morning it will have thinned and lifted and gone, and you will wake to a cold house and cold feet and never know that you had been held. It does not matter which. That is another mercy of the thing having no name and no face and no history. It does not ask you to make it a story. It does not need you to decide whether it is old or new. Whether it came up from under the house or arrived on the rain, it only needs you to rest. And it is very patient about your resting. The patience does not feel like the patience of something waiting for a thing to happen. It feels like the patience of the rain, which is not waiting for anything, which is only falling, which will fall whether you sleep or wake, and would rather, if rain can be said to want, that you sleep. Somewhere in the walls water moves. It is only the rain in the pipes, or the rain in the gutters, or the rain finding the old channels it always finds in a house this age, running down inside the walls in thin threads toward the ground. It is only that. But it moves the way blood moves in a body at rest, a slow, warm circulation to the whole downstairs, up one wall. across under the floor of your room, down the far wall. The house is warm because the water in its walls is warm, and the water is warm because something warm is resting in the middle of it. You are lying in a room in the middle of a warm, slow-living thing that is breathing rain, and you are not afraid, and you are nearly asleep. Let me tell you what will happen, so that you do not have to wonder, so that there is nothing left for the watchful part of you to keep watch over. Nothing will happen. That is the whole of what will happen. You will drift the rest of the way down. The room will come fully loose from its edges. You will not notice the moment it lets go, because nobody ever notices that moment. You will simply be here, warm, listening to the rain, and then you will be somewhere else, somewhere soft, and then it will be morning, or it will be some hour of the night when you half surface and turn over and find the pillow cool on its other side and sink again without ever quite waking. And all through it, all night, the house will breathe its slow breath under you and around you. The thing that has no name will rest where it rests and keep the warmth where the warmth is. It will not climb the stairs. It will not come to the side of your bed. It will not lean its weight onto the mattress behind you. It will not put its warmth against your back. It will not do any of the things you might, if you let the daylight part of you speak, be afraid that it will do. It will only rest. It only wants to rest near you in the warm, while the rain keeps the world at a distance. There is a weight to the night now. A good weight. The weight of a hand laid flat on the blanket over your feet. The weight of being kept. You have not felt kept in a long time. You did not know until tonight how much of your tiredness was that. The ordinary daily labor of keeping yourself, of being the only one who noticed whether the doors were locked, whether the light was off, whether the heat was down, whether the small sounds in the dark were nothing, of standing the whole watch of your own life, alone, every night, for years, without ever being able to fully lie down inside it. Tonight something has taken the watch from you. Something is keeping the house so that you do not have to. You can feel it keeping. The way you can feel in a warm room that someone has left a lamp on for you somewhere down the hall. A keeping that surrounds you and does not require you, that asks, in return, only that you rest. So rest. There is nothing you have forgotten to do. The doors are locked. You know they are. And even if one were not, it would not matter, because nothing that is out in the rain wants in. And the thing that wants to be here is already here and means you well. The light is off. The heat is low, and the house is warm anyway. Warmer than the number. There is nothing to check. There is nowhere to go. There is no one to be for the next many hours. You can put down the whole weight of being the one who watches. Let the warm, slow-breathing thing beneath the floor hold the watch, and go. The rain deepens again, and this time you almost do hear something in it, right at the edge of sleep, right where the mind makes its last few pictures before it lets the pictures go. You almost hear it settle into a rhythm you know. You feel the small pull to listen closer, to reach down into the sound and find the shape at the bottom of it, to name the thing that is keeping you, to turn in your mind and look at its face. Do not. Let it stay nameless. Let it stay faceless. The moment you name it, it becomes a someone, and a someone can be lost, and a someone can want, and a someone can climb the stairs. But an it, a warm, nameless, placeless it, only rests and keeps you, and never comes closer than the resting, and never has to. The not looking is the whole of the piece. Give it the not looking. It will give you the night. You breathe out, slow, and the house breathes out with you. The long creak going soft at the end. The settle. The letting go. You breathe in, slow, and the house breathes in. the joists easing, the water turning warm in the walls. The blanket over you has found every low place along your body and filled it. The small valley at the base of your back, the hollow behind your knees, the dip of your shoulder into the pillow. It lies in all of them at once, with its exact and gentle weight. There is nowhere the warmth is not. Your hands have gone loose. You did not notice them let go, but they are open now. Palms softening, fingers uncurling, one slow degree at a time. The last held things of the day slip out of them into the warm dark, where you will not need them until morning. Your jaw has eased. The little muscle at the corner of it that stays tight all day, that you never think of, that carries the whole weight of your careful watching, has let down. Your face is only a face now, at rest, turned into the pillow, breathing warm air in and out, asking nothing of itself. There is no part of you left that is still on watch. The last of you has come down off the wall, and the warmth is there to meet every place you let go, filling in behind you as you loosen, so that letting go feels like nothing but sinking further into something already warm, something already waiting, something already glad to take the weight. You breathe out again, and again the house breathes out with you. The two breaths are so close now, so exactly matched, that you could not say, if anyone asked, which of you began it. There is a smell to the house tonight, now that you notice it. It is a good smell. The smell of rain come indoors without the wet. The smell a house gets when it is old and warm, and it has been raining a long time outside. Clean wood, warm dust, and underneath, faint and far, the green mineral smell of the rain itself. Wet earth and wet leaves and the whole soaked world breathing out. It is the smell of every rainy night you have ever slept through safe. All of them at once. Even the ones from before you can properly remember. The deep early ones, when being kept warm through a storm was the entire world, and you did not yet know it would ever be your job to keep yourself. The smell does not belong to anyone. It is not a person's smell. It is nobody's. It is only the house and the rain and the warmth, making between them the plain animal comfort of a dry den in wet weather. And it settles over you with the rest of it. One more soft weight, one more thing keeping you here. You have slept through 100 storms in this house. More. You have lain in this bed and heard the rain on this roof through every season. The thin, cold rains of March. The warm, heady ones of July. The long, gray, patient ones of autumn that go on for days. On none of those nights did you feel what you feel tonight. And it does not trouble you not to know why tonight is the one. Perhaps every one of those nights the warmth was here, and you were too busy keeping your own watch to feel it holding. Perhaps it was gathering all this time, a little each storm. Patient as water finding its level, and only tonight had gathered enough to reach you. Or perhaps tonight is simply the night you were finally tired enough to stop. And a thing that is always resting in every house was finally able to rest with you. Because you finally, after so long, lay all the way down inside your own life and let it. It does not matter. Let the not mattering be one more of the warm weights. You are allowed tonight to not know a great many things and to rest anyway. The resting will not be any less deep for the not knowing. It will be deeper. The not knowing is where the deep. There is a great deal of night left. That is not a worry. It is a comfort. Hours and hours of it, dark and warm and full of rain, and you do not have to be awake for any of it. You have somewhere to be, and it is here, and you are already there. Whatever the day is going to ask of you, it cannot reach you now. It is on the far side of the rain, on the far side of the warm, on the far side of the slow breath of the house. It will wait. You do not have to think about it. And you will not. Let me say it once more, softly. And then I will stop saying anything and let you go the rest of the way down. There is nothing in this house tonight that means you harm. There is only a warmth with no name. Resting where you cannot see it. Keeping the house so that you do not have to. Breathing you gently down into sleep along the sound of the rain. It does not want you to turn and look. It only wants you to rest. And you are so warm. And your feet are warm. And the rain is on the roof. And you are not keeping time alone anymore. There is nowhere you have to be but here. And nothing you have to do but this. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. They are already closed. Good. Leave them. Feel the weight on the blanket over your feet. The good weight. The kept weight. Feel the warmth that comes from nowhere and stays. Feel the slow breath of the house rising and falling under you, and let your own breath ride it. In and out. Not keeping time. Only carried. Feel the rain go on and on above you. Steady. Meaning nothing. Wanting nothing. Promising nothing. Only falling. Only holding the whole world at a soft gray distance so that none of it can find you here. The stair does not creak again. It has said what it had to say. The house is quiet now, in the way a thing is quiet when it has stopped moving and started only breathing. The water in the walls runs warm and slow. Somewhere below you, in the middle of the warm, the nameless thing settles the last of the way into its rest. And its rest and your rest are the same rest now. The same slow breath. The same warm dark. Do not wonder if it will be here in the morning. Do not wonder if it was ever here at all. Those are questions for the daylight. And the daylight is hours and hours away. On the other side of all this rain. It will keep. Everything will keep. You have been kept. You are being kept. That is enough. It is more than you have had in a long while. And you do not have to do anything to deserve it, or hold it, or understand it. You only have to let it. You are letting it. You have been letting it all along. Rest now. Rest now. The rain has the roof. The house has the rain. The warm has the house. Something warm and nameless has the warm. And you are in the center of all of it. Held. Kept. Breathing slow. Going down. There is no end to this that you need to stay awake for. There is no last thing that is going to happen. There's only the rain and the warmth and the slow breath under the floor and the long soft night going on around you like water. And you drifting down through the middle of it, warm all the way through. Not alone. Not afraid. Not keeping the watch. Not turning to look. Sleep. The house will keep the warmth. The rain will keep falling. The night will keep. You do not have to do any of it. You only have to be here and be warm and let the breath carry you and rest. And the house will rest with you all the long night, and the rain will go on above you, soft and endless, asking nothing. There's nothing more for you to do now. Nothing at all. Nothing but the warm dark and the slow breath and the rain. And you resting in the middle of it. Kept. And warm. And going down. And gone. Rest now. The house has you. The rain has the house. Stay where you are. Do not turn. Sleep.